Yo, good looks to dreadsock.com for sponsoring this episode of Real Notes. Anyone who has curly or locked hair like me knows how sacred a good hair wrap is. A do-rag, a wave cap, a scarf, a bandana, a bonnet, you name it. Dreadsock goes a step beyond the average with silk-based head wraps that offer full protection and frizz control for curls from 2A to 4C. They're made of a blend of breathable materials to help retain hair's moisture and preserve hairstyles enough to ensure a few less trips to the salon, all held down with an elastic band strong enough to withstand even the most aggressive head trips. Whether you wear one to bed or wear one on the go, Dread Sock will have you looking fresh and full. Socks come in all sizes, from shorties for short hair and beginner twists to extra large for the longer locked folks out there. Look, y'all, I've been growing my locks for nearly 2 decades and have been a loyal Dread Sock customer for 15 years. So when I tell you these shits work, I'm dead ass. Plus, they're an independent, black-owned business that's worth the time and energy. So go to dreadsock.com and use promo code CineMasai, that's CineMasai, for 10% off your first order. They won't fall off in your sleep, but they will keep you looking fresh. Thanks again to Dreadsock for sponsoring the episode. Now let's keep this shit moving. What's good, y'all? My name is Dylan Green, and this is Real Notes, a space dedicated to blurring the cultural and artistic lines between rap and film. I'm here to chop it up with everyone from rappers and producers to journalists and video directors about their relationship to movies and how, if at all, film inspires their craft. My guest this week is California-based journalist, artist manager, A&R, chef, and musician Walasia Shabazz. We spoke about Khaleesi's cooking with cannabis, growing up around Hollywood royalty, her family's roots in film and music, her love for Star Wars and Almost Famous, her journey through the worlds of music journalism and music management, her relationship with the late MF Doom, and more stories and anecdotes than I can count. Come fuck with us. What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back to Real Notes. It's still summer. Don't let anybody tell you it's not still summer. It's goddamn 92 degrees outside. It's hot, but it's great. You know, it's great and it's terrible. The ozone layer is melting. We might not have long for this world, but we're enjoying ourselves. It's all good. I don't mind. All things considered, but I'm feeling good. My name's Dylan Green, CineMasai. Got a lot of names, do a lot of shit, be around, be outside. And I say all the time that I'm talking with somebody who's got a lot of names. This person has a lot of names. A lot of names, has lived many lives. It continues to live many lives in front of and behind the camera and the mic and recording equipment and A&Ring. I don't even know where to start, but you know, like this woman's a journalist, a writer, an A&R, a musician, child of musicians. You know, I'm gonna be here for 5 minutes listing all the things you've done, but we've got Walasia Shabazz, aka Allah's Reflection, MJ. Yeah.
Actually, Walasia, like the continent.
I'm so sorry.
All good. Everyone does it.
It's my fault. I see. I was paranoid because I wanted to be the one person. I wanted to be the one person who got it right on the first try. I was like, I'm gonna just take a stab at it.
You did well. You're better than many. You did good.
Oh, well,
I'm
thank you.
so happy to be here on Real Notes. And I'm Walasia. Some people call me MJ. Before the Walasia, my name was Miranda Jane. And yeah, that's me. And I'm happy to be here. And like he said, I mean, is it summer? Is it winter? I'm in West Oakland. And it's freezing out this morning. And it's kind of like we're here for a good time, not a long time, just like the ozone layer.
Already. Why is it so cold in Oakland right now?
Well, where I'm at, I'm actually house sitting for Tajai while they finish up Souls of Mischief tour. And it's right by the ocean, basically. So it's between, like, right on the edge of Oakland, right before you get to San Francisco. So there's a bay between, so you get like marine layer, and which is not to say there's not hot days. There were a few this summer, but this area in particular, you know, Bay Area is like made up of microclimates. So it's been oddly cold and chilly. And then usually there's like in October, indigenous or native, or what most people call Indian summer. And sometimes it gets into the 110s for like 3 or 4 weeks. And so people are thinking, oh, it's fall. Let me get out the Carhartt or the beanie. No. It's going to be hot.
Yeah, y'all really be going through it over there weather wise. Like it's so much. Like we think, like we have it crazy out here. I'm from Jersey. I stay in Jersey. I'm out on Long Island right now. But like weather's just weird everywhere. I don't like it in general. It's a lot. But we maintain. I'm right near the water too, so I get it. It's cold out here. When it's cold, it's cold.
When
Like
the air comes off the especially the ocean, you're gonna get freezing, you're gonna get cold. So, but here it's just like you never really know. In San Francisco's even more. You have to kind of bring all four seasons clothing with you at all times and
mhm.
just be ready and be prepared.
Y'all be wearing flannel and shit out there for no reason.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. But I'm from LA, so it's very different because but even back home with this whatever this is global warming or a slow end of the world or whatever it is that we're experiencing, the
Right.
weather in LA seasonally is different and the crops are different. And like out here, I do like a lot of private chefing and I go to the farmers markets and I was expecting to wait until like now for figs because it's kind of just starting what usually would be fig season, but now it's like over and it's so weird like how like the seasonality of things has just gone haywire and it's just like they need to fix their weather machine.
Yeah, no, my sister's going through the same thing right now because my sister's studying to be an herbologist and
Oh, nice.
like also just chefs a ton anyway. So like we're always trying to hit up farmers markets and just finding like all the fun seasonal food to make. It's a that's a like I love cooking. I love watching people cook. I love being around cooking. So I feel you. I
It's
feel you.
it's the best, and the seasonal stuff is really the way to go. Because here in California, like, they fly food here from all over the world, like, I could literally just go get any food product you can imagine from any country, but then it's, like, the carbon footprint, and it's not fresh, and it's expensive, and you wonder, like, how long ago was it harvested, and what did it have to go through, so I try to do the opposite of what most people do. I don't come up with my recipe or my meal plan first. I go to the farmer's market first, and I see especially now, like I used to know the almanac and my granny taught me the seasons, and especially in California, I used to know what was what. But now I'm just like, it's wild, it's chaotic, whatever's there, I'm gonna make something with it because it's what's fresh and it's what's good and it's what's in season. So yeah.
Right. And like that's how like a lot of the best recipes are just like made just from people taking what they have and you just make it, like
Always.
I don't want to say you can't go wrong, but like, more often than not you'll stumble onto something you like. So fuck it.
It's true. That's right.
Um Man, well yeah, once again, thank you for being here. It really means a lot. I have a great amount of respect for what you do and what you've done and just like you've like just between like once again, you've done so much and we're going to try to cover as much of that as we can before it like gets to be a lot. I don't have fly fidelity time on me,
Right,
unfortunately.
right. Or drink champs time. And
Or drink champs time. I'm not there yet. We'll see one day. But either way, like it just means the world. Like once again, a lot of respect. You do you do a ton of great work, and it's just great to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here and especially to talk about Hollywood and film and television because it's like a big part of my story and I rarely get asked about it and I rarely get to reflect on it. And so I'm just excited for that part of it because like the music stuff is like you can kind of not to sound like hyphy, but you can kind of Google me when it comes to the music stuff. But you're gonna find out some whole new information today that I've never talked about on an interview or on camera before.
Oh man, yeah, no, you were already telling me about some of it on Twitter. So yeah, no, before we get into that specifically, I'm gonna ask you the first question I ask everybody who comes on here. What was the last movie or TV show you watched that you had a strong opinion about?
A strong opinion about, well, I watched that Khalees show, Cooking with Cannabis. I don't even know what it's called. It's on Netflix.
I know the
What
one
is
you're
it
talking
called?
about. It's like something like cooking with
Cooking with
cannabis, or
Cannabis.
it's like a reality show competition thing, right?
Yes, it's a competition
Yeah.
thing for celebrity judges, and I did watch most of the second season. I kind of lightly binged it, but I have a strong feelings about it definitely because like the guests were like a trip. Like the one that I mostly paid attention to, the episode I paid the most attention to, had LP and his wife or fiance, and
Hmm.
then like a transgender actress or a model or I'm not exactly sure, like a performer of some kinds. And then
Mhm.
I think I want to say Too Short. So the guest list is like real. They're trying to cover all the bases there, and I just think like I think it's well done, and I think Khalees is like an amazing person, and she's so dope, and like she knows all this about food and cooking, and she has her farm, and she's a good hostess, and she's like smart and funny and snappy, and she's like so perfect for this show and for this role. And I learn a lot because like I've done a lot of edibles. I've been
Mhm.
a private chef for a long time, but there are certain people where I just kind of only had that relationship with them where I just did their edibles for them, like the Jacko, rest in peace, was my Muslim brother, and he was murdered out here. And I didn't get to ever really spend a lot of time with him. I did a couple of things where I worked, music business wise with his manager, PK Prashant, but it came known to PK that I was doing the edibles. And so he was like, oh, he said, could you think you could do something for the Jack? And I'll just come and pick it up. And I was like, yeah, I bet I would love to. So I made him some special peanut butter cups. It was an invention that I made just for him. So in the chocolate, I put sativa, and in the peanut butter, I put indica, so that it would be like very balanced and cover all the
Wow.
bases. And so like I never got to actually like feed Jack, but with my edible clients, for some reason, it's kind of always like that. That like other people would deliver them or pick them up, or I would mail them to people I've never met, or people, pick them up in person, or maybe someone would like be selling them at shows or events. I used to do these bean pies that were medicated, which a lot of people were very upset about. And it had the Rasta, like a Rasta lion on it, as well as the moon and star. And it was called Baked at 420. I did it with my sis, who's a Rasta. And she used to take him to all the reggae shows and parties, and she would just go with her bag. This was when things were still, clandestine, and you couldn't like go to the shopping mall and buy all these edibles. Like out here, they have
Right.
shopping malls of weed now, so it's a trip. But
That's
just,
crazy.
like, down low, like if you have 50 and you want one of these, you buy them from sis out of her bag at the reggae show, and so she would come back and be like, oh, I saw such a, oh, Capleton said da 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 da, or I'd be like, you've got to be kidding me, like please stop playing. So there's like people that I fed a lot of stars, but there's ones that I didn't ever even get a chance to meet, and for the most part those happened to be edible plants. I guess kind of just the way it was set up. Yeah.
Wow. Before I even get back to the Khalees show, I mean, like you starting off with like making edibles for the Jacka, like that's nuts. Like who else have you made edibles and or just like cooked for? Like is who else?
So many. This all started really with like one of the biggest ones that I always remember was I was living with my auntie and uncle for a while, helping out with my cousins and their kids, and huge mansion in LA because they were wealthy. I was not. And I heard this record called Love Allah by this group called Self Scientific, which was Chase Infinite, DJ Khalil, and then there was a brother named Frank who ran their label. And on the vinyl there was a phone number. So I said, you know what? I love this record so much. I want to interview them, and I'm going to call them. I'm going to call the number. So I called them, and they happened to have their lab really close to where my auntie and uncle's house was. So I thought, my family's on vacation. I have the whole house to myself. Why don't I cook up, invite them, do the interview, feed them, just the whole thing. And then I'll be able to get a good write up for Self Scientific, and I'll get to know more about them and all the stuff. And so they come to the door with crayons on, but I went to junior high school with him, and he's albino brother. So of course, like as soon as you see him, you're like, oh, but I literally went to junior high school with him. So when I opened the door, although I didn't know Khalil personally at that point, and I had seen Frank but didn't know him, of course I knew Chase because Bigga B was his older cousin, and I had known Bigga for a long time and always seen Chase at Unities. And so when they came in, I was like, oh, like I didn't even know I was going to be, cooking for and Khalil has all these allergies, like so many food allergies. So I had to like ask all these questions. And I do this with all my music clients and with all my catering clients, and because it's like mostly the people I cook for have a lot of special diets because of mostly their belief. At that time, Chase was in the 5% Nation of Gods and Earth, and Khalil was a Sunni Muslim, but he had a lot of food allergies on top of that. And then
Right.
so it was like I had to craft this meal where I was like, oh wait, I can't make that because of what Khalil can and can't eat. So it was like this amazing dinner, and we ate, and I, got to know them and conducted a little interview, and I ended up doing that as a journalist. And then once that was done, I said, okay, these are like fam, like I wanted to do more. So I actually became their publicity agent and then like a vice president of marketing and promotions for SOL Music Works for their label and for the Self Science, which came out on Landspeed. Shout out to Landspeed for never paying anyone, including me. They, they had someone like an outside press agent, but I was like the family press agent. And so we would like have this like machine that no underground people had, but it all started from that dinner and the fact that like that sitting down and that meal made us like instantly connected and made us like a family. And especially with me having known Krondon since I was basically a child. It makes it more than just like this is an interview or this is a meeting or
Right.
it all started in LA. And then Chase, when he went to work a lot over at Muggs's studio in the Valley, I was visiting from New York. I had left the Source after that whole fiasco. I hit Chase and I was like, I'm here, I'm in LA. And he was like, he's like, can you come and cook big Jamaican food? I'm over here with Muggs and some Soul Assassins cast and it's going to be people in and out. Would you mind? And I was like, of course not. So like, I got groceries and came to Muggs and with all this stuff. And it was my first time like really officially meeting Muggs in person. And then I did this like huge Jamaican food and a lot of casts were there, like people from Soul Assassins and some known, people that I was like Esteban Oriol stopped by, and to me that was like royalty. And so like,
Wow.
just different people from SA that are like to me like, being from LA and being a reformed chola and all that stuff, it was like for me a big deal. But famous like Muggs probably was the most famous one there at that time. But it was all due to Chase. And then it led to when they started Angelus Records, Chase, Khalil, and Muggs were the, one third owners. So Chase reached me and he was like, we don't have much of a budget. Can you come and help me with this label? Because people are giving me the craziest prices for all the different services and I don't have it. And you do the job so good, whether I'm paying you nothing or whether I pay you a little or I can pay you a lot. So I really want you to come. And I was like a no-brainer to me. Like it's a studio, it's a label, it's where Muggs creates, it's got a kitchen, it's got an office. And like, I was there for the Jizz and Muggs album. I was there for the Self Scientific album. And I was there for the Mitchie Slick Urban Survival Syndrome album. But when I came there was no label. Like we were just building it and putting it together. And like the first day I had to type up the lyrics for Muggs and Jizz. And then of course, because I was there, I did everything. Like if there was any opportunity to cook anytime, I would just cook for everybody and just have as much food on deck as possible. And just there was a grocery store down the street. So anytime they were in sessions or I was able to get like a quick, like I know I'm going to have an hour or two where there's nothing urgent for me to do administratively or there's no meeting or there's no whatever, I would walk to the grocery store and spend whatever I had gotten paid that month from them on groceries, bring it back and have something chef by the time they came out of the session. There was always all this, homemade food and stuff. And it was just such a honor to cook for Muggs and everybody who was always through there. And then also like Chase and Khalil, like my brothers, like my loved ones, so right. Cooking for them. One time I made some vegan carne asada tacos and they were like a huge hit. And I didn't even tell everybody that it was vegan until after. And now Chase is like a devout vegan now. And it all started with that one meal. Like he had his nanny and his girl at the time contacted me that evening and asked like, how did I make it? What's the recipe? How can it be done? And then in the morning, everybody got there early the next day to try to steal what was left over in the fridge. And I was like, y'all better leave that for Muggs because I'm not, like that's leave that. And so just like, little things like that. It was like, just like always an honor to cook over there. And also just to be able to like work in a kitchen that was at that time, like marble kitchen with an island and all the amenities and all the nice pots and pans. And, for me, sometimes the studio kitchen is like, first of all, I have to clean it from top to bottom because it's covered in mold and filthy dishes and nasty cigarette butts and stuff. So, but usually the studio kitchen is not much more than maybe like a hot plate and a microwave and like a couple old dirty dishes. And so to be able to cook in a kitchen like that, I was always like, it's like a dream.
I can only imagine. And just like, it's like, I've never had vegan carne asada before, but my sister, there was a period of time my sister was vegan. And she taught me how to make cornbread with applesauce instead of eggs. Mm-hmm. And I haven't done it since, but that shit was incredible. And what'd you say?
I said it's so good because it's a little sweet.
Yeah, it's so good, and it just like works as like the emulsifier and like the bonding agent that you need. You know, like I'm not vegan, but I obviously, you know, like
Same.
I like balance. You know, we all grow and mature. We need to make sure our bodies are straight.
It's
But
true.
like, yeah,
You asked for a list though, and that brings me to the next point, which is like it was in my bio at a certain point. I had to change it because he went healthy and natural, but in my bio at one point it was like I only cook pork for Thurston Howell the third because
yeah,
I was, you know, my friend and he came to work with me for a few days in Brooklyn and I was like, well, what do you want to eat? And he was like pork chops, pork sausage, eggs. And I was like, I was living in a studio, which was like a apartment kind of slash closet in Brooklyn. It was illegal. It had no windows. This was where Doom and I had the studio as well later.
yeah.
And so I was like, okay, it's Thurston. And I said, you know, excuse my language, but fuck it. I'll ruin my pans. I'll cook this haram shit in my house and it's Thurston. So of course, like I'm gonna make the pork chops. I'm gonna make the pork sausage for breakfast. I'm gonna make everything with pork on top of pork. And we had this whole conversation about how I had been to the island and I had sat on the beach for like 3 hours waiting for them to make me some mofongo vegetarian. Like I had to explain it to them in my Mexican Spanish, which was very hard because I've never been to Puerto Rico and I'd never tried to have like a conversation in this different Spanish. But we worked it out and I waited for hours and they made it. And so I told him about that and he had never at that time even been to the island yet. Crazy. So he was like, no, he's like vegan Puerto Rican food. He's like, no, that's not Puerto Rican food. He's like, it's gotta have the pork. It's gotta have the pork. Da, da, da. So we had this whole conversation. And then years later we talked and he was like, yeah, he's like, you know, I'm all healthy and mostly vegan and I'm mostly like full with soups. And I was like, well, I was like, what are you about to ask me to make some vegan Puerto Rican food? And he was like, oh, I would love to try it. I said, but what did you say? What did you tell me all those years ago? You told me if it didn't have no pork, it wasn't Puerto Rican food. So I mean, Thurston Howell, Doom, Grim, Curious, Dana Dane. Oh my goodness, my homeboy Lord Scotch, who made the Doom mask and the Doomsday Operation Doomsday cover. Blake's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
He was living in the LES with a woman named Ellie, and her family owned the Amsterdam News. They had a nice, you know, nice kitchen, nice spot. So he went to music and arts with Dana Dane and Slick Rick and a number of other people. But I was there and I was going to cook and I was already had all my stuff together to make one of my granny's pasta recipes. And then the phone rang. It was the house phone days. This was before all the socials and the cells and stuff. And he was like, he put down the phone and he was like, all right. He's like, is there enough food for another person? And I was like, yeah, of course. He was like, oh, it's Dana Dane. And I was like, okay. Breathe. I was like, okay, breathe. It's regular. Just make your granny's food the way you always would. But when I was cooking it and when we were eating it, I was just like, I just didn't. And then later he brought me to when I did the Slick Rick cover for the Source. I went through Blake instead of going through a publicist, and he brought me to the Bronx, and me and Blake and Slick Rick and his woman Mandy all sat down and had a meal together before I did the interview. So it was like being with family, and like I never got to feed Slick Rick, but we got all to eat together, and we talked about how I cooked for Dana, and it was like part of the conversation, and how did I know Blake and everything, which was via Zoom. And so just like that was one of the biggest honors for me. Like, I mean, I've cooked for like some super famous people. And when I was at Complex, and especially like when I was going to LA to like run editorial or run photo shoots or whatever, there was one cover we did with Tony Hawk and Exhibit. Then we also did another shoot to save money at the same time. And it was DJ Quick and Kronzon and Exhibit came through. And there were all these models and Claudia Jordan was there. And so I made a whole, and it was at this famous graffiti artist house that Ket hooked up. And so like the kitchen was fly and I had all this like stuff. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go crazy, like, and cook for my friends. And then Quick is also going to be there. Oh my God. And then I didn't know Claudia Jordan was coming, but I knew of her work. So when she came, I had made a huge baked mac and cheese and I had made brownies and barbecue chicken. I made a full barbecue because I was like, maybe they'll shoot it since we're doing like a barbecue photo shoot in the back by the pool and we're doing these drinks. Maybe they'll shoot some of the food too. And then I can kind of get in on that note too. So Claudia kept coming in and I expected her to be the one. I was like, oh, I have a veggie platter. She was like, girl, fuck that veggie platter. She was like, give me that mac and cheese. She's like, I need some more baked mac and cheese. Like, that is the best baked mac and cheese I've had outside of my food. I need more of that. She's like, what's for dessert? She's like, oh, you have a peach cobbler, you have brownies. Oh, save me this, save me ice cream, save me this. And I was like, wow, it's like a supermodel who eats food. This is so cool. And just being able to feed her and then having Quick and his people come in, it was like, that was pretty, pretty nifty, pretty fancy. And just like, I don't know, just through all of that, I've just ended up cooking for so many different people and so many kinds of people. And I don't know, it's just been like a passion of mine. And mostly I do it either for free or I pay to do it. I've had a few paying clients and I've had a few labels pay me and I've had a few events pay me to do green room. And sometimes when I worked at labels, I would work it into the budget. If we were going to pay a caterer anyway, I would slash the budget and do
Right.
it and basically buy groceries and keep like 50 or $100. And I mean, it's really for the love and also for so that what happened to Nate Dogg doesn't happen to other people. He died basically because he was always forced to be on tour and always in the studio and he never got real food. And it killed him. And it's killed a lot of people. And
Right.
like with Tajay and I've chefed on and off for them, really just as friends, but since the '90s, early '90s. But when he was doing like European tours or overseas tours, when I was helping him run the label, he would reach me and he'd be like, "I just landed to this place. Everything has pork. Can you please find me food?" And I would just go online and try to figure out the language and try to figure out the Google and try to find falafels or find something or just something where he could go eat and find him a masjid where he could pray if he had time and, just stuff like that. Or same thing like Vinny Paz, who I don't know very well, somehow had heard down the line that like, oh, there's this Muslim lady and she can find you food that won't kill you while you're in such and such country. And he hit me late at night one night and he was like, I'm in this place and I don't know. And can you help me? And so I found him some food or whatever, just stuff like that. It's a passion of mine because it's like that's really our life. It should be our life. And a lot of times recording artists are literally starved for real food because everywhere you go, the studio has a vending machine with candy bars and chips in it. They don't have time to stop, so you go to McDonald's. People get a fancy hotel, but they don't think about getting the cheaper 3-star that has a kitchen in it, or having the tour bus built out with the kitchen in it, and having the homie who chefs, or someone like me, or they don't think about that a lot of the times. And so slowly it erodes your health, it erodes your body. You're already tired, you're already getting sick, you're losing your voice, you're catching whatever people have in all these different cities, and you have no recourse, and you come home like totally depleted, and then you don't have anything to give your friends and your family and your children and your loved ones. So I've always done it as like kind of like a band-aid, or like in Almost Famous, which is
Yeah.
my favorite movie is the director's cut of Almost Famous. Um, and I have always been like, you know what, if I can do it, I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah. I mean, like like if not you, like just yeah, no, just yeah, just even like on like an individual level, just like taking that, like taking it upon yourself to like really cook for yourself and like know what you're putting in your body is super duper important. And like like occasionally, like I'm like I love me some McDonald's. I'm not even gonna lie and trip about that. I'm sorry, but like it is. But yeah, like that's just like like I've always been really fascinated just like by just like the community aspects of cooking as well. And like before we move on, like if you were to go on Cooking with Cannabis and make Khalees something, what would you make Khalees? Because I need to know.
Yeah, I think I would do a soul food meal for her. And I would start off with like some cornmeal fried okra, and probably maybe start off with like putting some CBD. Like I would probably make like a hot dip to go with it, like spicy hot, and put some
Yeah.
CBD in there because they were showing that the CBD calms the pain that you get from eating very spicy foods. So I'd make like a ranch and then also a spicy sauce with some CBD. And then I would like go on to do definitely baked mac and cheese, which is really easy to medicate. I could even make a vegan one too. I could probably make a vegan and a regular one because mac and cheese without the dairy, if you eat dairy, is like you want that. You want that real cheese. But for people who
Right.
have to be vegan, I usually do a vegan and gluten-free one together for people who have the specialty stuff. And then I've done medicated fried chicken before, so I definitely would do that. Collard greens, I probably would do the Brazilian style ones with the slivered garlic. I cook it in coconut oil, super easy to medicate coconut oil. And then for a dessert, I would probably make like a CBD pecan ice cream from scratch and like a indica in the crust of the peach cobbler and sativa in the juice of the peaches or something like that, and just like make a
Ooh.
dessert that was like super hot for everybody. And probably some kind of tea or punch, or maybe like a half lemonade, half iced tea or something like that. And actually someone just brought me some medicated pecans that their brother made. And I was thinking like, I could make a sakatumi cake with these and just chop these up and then maybe only medicate the frosting and the nuts because they said they were really strong, and then just leave the cake plain. Because I don't want to like blow anybody's, brain out of the water. But I love to do a lot of desserts when I can, and usually I might try to maybe do one that's gluten free. But for those people, usually they just want like some kind of fruit or something. And so for like, I probably do what I just said with the cobbler, but then also probably like a pineapple upside down cake that would also go nice with the ice cream. And then I probably would do something like a sakatumi cake with those medicated pecans that I have in there or something like that.
That's so fire.
Which is
I I haven't seen the second season of the show yet, but I watched most of the first. And the only episode I remember is the one with where Michael Rappaport and Boldy James were on there. And and like this is like right before Boldy went on his run that like everybody knew him for. So like seemed like I like like I was
yeah,
familiar.
right.
So like see like I saw him and I was like both like they introduced him by his real name and I was like,
Yeah.
is that
Cool.
Boldy James? I was like, is that Boldy James? What's he doing here? And it was just wasn't expecting to see him there, and he would just sit there and talk, and I'm like, oh shit, cool, good for him.
Such
Like,
a good mix of guests. I love the mixture of the guests that are on there, and I really didn't get to pay that much attention, and I wanted to watch the whole season again and really get a chance to like take a little bit of a vacation since my summer's kind of about to wrap up. And that was, I think, my strongest opinion was like when she came out, she had her hair braided in a crown and she had the baby's breath running through it. And it was like an homage to Minnie Riperton. And I thought about how like the generations and the music and like whether she did that herself or the stylist did it or the hairstylist did it. And she had like some kind of denim fit too. So it was kind of like a whole
right.
thing to like of like for those who know, and for those who don't. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure a lot of people don't know who LP is, even with his
Definitely.
new reinventing himself and being on these big tours with Killer Mike and my homeboy DJ Trackstar from St. Louis and all that whole thing. There's
Yeah.
still millions of people who are like, who's that guy? You know what I'm saying? And then for us, it's like co-flow. It's like, oh shit. So there's layers. You know what I'm saying? There's layers to it. And even Short, probably like Short was old. He was quiet. He wasn't ostentatious. He was dressed very plain. He was on the end of the table. I don't remember if they called him Todd Shaw or if they called him Too Short or what they called him, but for people who don't know, they were probably like, but then Khalees and Too Short had a whole huge hit song and video together. So it was so dope that they
Mhm.
like threw him in there as a host. And I was like, wow, the layers of this show are like brilliant because it connects. There's something that connects to every generation, and there's so much you can learn. Because like I'm a for real private chef for years, and I've done edible chefing, which a lot of people have never even thought of doing. But even I'm learning. Like they had some CBD sugar, and I was all on Google like, well, I need CBD sugar urgently. Like, where do I get this from? Like, what the heck? So I was learning about the ingredients, and I just thought that was my strong opinion was like, what a brilliant concept, and what great casting. And like even I mean, I think there could be more done with the music aspect of it, but I just thought that like
Definitely.
I just I think it's just a dope ass show and such a great concept, and I think she's awesome.
Yeah, no, I want to catch up. Like at some point when I have time, I really want to watch the new season and like really tap in. Just like, yeah, no, like that's one thing I really appreciated when because I was watching it with my father at the time, and like I would just see people and point out like, oh, that's so and so, that's so and so. He'd be like, oh, it's just like because he's 78, so like there's
Wow.
a like there's quite a generational gap between the two of us, so like it's always fun for him to like point out people that I don't know, and then I point out people he doesn't know. So
I love that. That's
that's that's that's that's always fun to me. I try not to take that for granted.
Yeah, I was like
Um,
that with my father too. He was born in the 30s, and
mm, okay,
he had been live in classical music since a child. He was a child prodigy, but then he had
right,
been involved in jazz and jazz
right, yeah,
performing, and jazz
jazz,
recording since the late 40s,
right,
the late 1940s. So like the generation gap was huge. He was far elder than my mother and far elder than me, and so like there was always that thing where he would be like, oh, this and such and such. And one time he was rehearsing, and um I was a kid, and he was like, "Can you go open the door?" And I opened the door, and it was Wendy from Wendy and Lisa, Wendy Malvoine, because her dad,
Wow.
the famous jazz player, and she was there with her dad, and her dad was there to jam with my dad. But for me, I was like, so I'm stuck. Like it was as close to touching Prince, as I thought that I was gonna probably get. I ended up touching,
Right.
but just not like that. Not like that. I didn't
No,
touch.
I feel you. I get it.
I
I get
didn't mean to
it.
look out, and I was like, I did get to meet Prince. But no,
Of course.
when Wendy Malvoine came, I was like, I told my stepmother, I was like, you don't understand that that's Wendy from the Revolution, and she was kind of like, she was younger too, but she was kind of like, it's her dad, and I was like, yeah, my dad, like her dad and my dad right now, like crazy. But the generation, that gap of like, it was like pretty big. That's a
Yeah, I
lot of,
feel it.
yeah.
Yeah, it really, really is. Yeah, nah, like before we move on, my father sang doo-wop. He was in a group called Connie and the Decoys. And he roller skated as a part of a group called the Village Wizards out in New York. They did like commercials and traveled all over. Yeah,
So
he's oh, you've heard it? That's crazy.
I have.
Wow. Yeah, no, he's seen he's lived more lives than anyone I've ever met in my life. So he like the fact that he's still here, and like he does like voiceover work and all that stuff. So like he moves around as much as I do. It's like it's incredibly inspiring. Like I'm 31, he's 78, so it's
Wow.
like
Whoa.
he's like he's a superhero, in a lot of ways. So that's
It comes through the blood and the ancestors, like, it really, really does. Because I know so many people, like, one night I went to the studio with Doom, and that was the night I met Mr. Len, and it was a session, and Gene was there, and,
Jean Grey.
yeah, and so talking to Gene and finding out about her parents, their parents, the parents,
Yeah.
and their roots to jazz in South Africa and all those things. I was like, wow, we're jazz babies together. Like, this is so cool. And I've had that come up with so many people, like Mystic, the woman rapper from out here in Oakland, same one jazz parent. And then like, just there's so many various people. I mean, that was really my big connection with Madlib. I mean, I've known him since I was a teenager, but when I finally sat down with him to interview him for Mass Appeal,
Yeah.
that was like one of the ways that I got him to open up, especially in that era. He was painfully shy, and it was
Yeah.
incredibly difficult to interview him. So knowing him was a big help because we had that rapport already. But even then, it was hard to get him to really open up and talk. But then when we brought up jazz, and I brought up my father, who's Buell Neidlinger, and he's a very avant-garde and legendary jazz bass player. Otis Madlib, his uncle, is John Faddis, who,
Mm-hmm.
my father and his uncle did play music together and knew each other and recorded together. So once that came up, the whole everything changed. The conversation and his demeanor and his tenor, and it when the last thing I asked him in the Mass Appeal interview was, what if you could work with anybody, who would you really, really want to work with? And he happened to say Doom. And so I wrapped up the interview, and when I turned off the tape and I went to, thank him and give him his hug, I said, I'm actually doing Doom's business management now.
Right.
And I said, I'm going to make this happen for you. And that's how Matt Villain came. So it's from DJ Soul, who was one of my good friends and one of the greatest DJs ever to come out of New York. And he was my music editor at Mass Appeal. He knew I was in LA. He knew I knew Liv. He assigned me the article. I happened to ask that question at the end. We happened to have the jazz thing in common. I coincidentally happened to be Doom's whatever. And it just, it became Matt Villain and Matt Villainy. And it's like, it's a thing. And so like, all those connections, without that thing of his uncle and my dad, who knows? Who knows how that
Yeah.
would have went? Who knows what the outcome would have been? Just that question alone could be the thing that actually opened the door of what created the whole entire group and album. Come on.
Right. Yeah, no, that was absolutely a nexus point. And yeah, I'm happy you brought that up because I was going to bring that up way later when we talked more about your stuff. But yeah, like this is just like there's already so much. There's just like already so much to just like take apart here, and this has already been so great. But before I get too far off track, what's the first movie experience you can remember having growing up? It could be at the theater, it could be at your cousin's house. First thing that comes to mind for you.
Well, for me, it's that when I was an infant, I was a year, maybe a year and a month old or something like that. My mother had been cast already in the film Shampoo with Goldie Hawn and Warren Beatty. And I believe when it first started, she was pregnant, but not too pregnant. I think this is how the story goes. So that would have been probably sometime in 73. But then as movies go, the timeline kind of kept stretching out. And so she was like massively pregnant. And then I was born. And then when it was actually time to like do the thing, I was an infant. She was breastfeeding. So, you know, my mom was like a very special, crazy hippie lady. And, you know, she was a jazz drummer herself. She did one record with my dad and my godfather, Marty Crystal. And then she retired to do, you know, to do mom things and wife things for a while and, you know, that kind of thing. So I think this was kind of like, you know, her kind of last shot of like, okay, I'm gonna get to be in this like big movie, this big Hollywood movie. So the scene was in a bar and they gave her a fake spliff and she was like got mad and she threw it and she was like, no, I'm not smoking that, I'm smoking my real shit. So my mother at a bar, it's a real bar in the film, it's like a whole scene and she has her breasts out, so I'm breastfeeding and she's holding me and she's smoking a spliff and she's like fully in the movie. It gets cut because it's crazy, like in America you can show like AK-47 assault rifle, like killing
Yeah.
everybody. But you can't show my Umi with her part of her breast showing with me suckling, getting my food from. No, can't show that.
Yeah, yeah, right. God forbid we show a bare breast in a movie. Like,
Oh no!
absolutely.
So it gets cut out on the actual like regular TV, but it's on the DVD and it's on cable and it's on the film. So I actually on my social security statement I have a $500 income when I was one in 74. So I have this income and then it's like a big blank until you know, until I got to junior high and started doing the frozen yogurt thing or whatever. But
Right.
so that was like, and I can't say that I remember that specifically because I was tiny, but my first that's movie sorry the first movie I remember being in was that, but my first like movie memory experience was this. My neighbor down the street lived in a log cabin and her name was Carrie Fisher and she went on to become Princess Leia in
Yeah, I
Star
was about to say that Carrie Fisher.
That
Yeah.
Carrie Fisher. She was my right down the street neighbor at my mom's house. On the same side of the street, she lived in a log cabin. And I went to elementary school with Hanako Williams, same time as Carrie was my neighbor, her dad being Billy D. So in elementary, you know, I kind of knew who Billy D. Williams was. I was a little kid, but also it was like Billy D was clearly somebody. Like you even know no matter what age you were or whether you knew what he had been in or whatever, when he used to come to school to pick her up himself, which wasn't maybe as frequently, but you would be, even as a child, I was like, wow, that's like Billy D. Williams, like wow, you know, just wow. Because everybody, I had very few wow moments because I lived in the Hollywood Hills and my father was a very renowned jazz musician and people in my family worked in Hollywood and all of our neighbors, mostly people were below the line or behind the scenes, but there were huge directors and producers and filmmakers and really important people in the entertainment industry that I went to school with their children or their nieces or nephews. And so like everybody was quote unquote famous or somehow important or somehow whatever.
Right.
But there's certain people that stood out where you were like, so I remember us going to the Cinerama Dome. I was a very, very small child. It was a big deal. Everybody was saying, don't bring her. She's too young. You shouldn't be bringing a kid. She's not going to act right. It was the Star Wars premiere. And I went.
The first one.
Yes.
Mm.
And I didn't do anything bad. I was quiet. I mean, I'd already been in a movie, so you know, watching one was like whatever. But it was. I remember that because it was like a big, big deal. And then a big part of it was like, that's the lady that I see when, we take the trash out to the curb, that's the lady. She's the princess. It started to kind of click for me like, wait a second. Like, hold on. Like the music stuff was always like the most famous musicians were constantly rotating around the house. I was so over it by the time I was like, okay, whoever that is, whatever. Miles Davis, okay, anyway, next. Like I wasn't even, it was whatever. But the Hollywood stuff, that kind of was like a crystallization for me, like, yo, like this is some like serious. My neighbor is like seriously like, whoa, this movie is whoa, and this lady is wow, and everything is it. And then by the time it was The Empire Strikes Back, I was still in school and still in elementary, and Billy D was still coming, but then he was like a super, super, superstar by that time. And so it was kind of different and just like, those kind of experiences. But Star Wars is definitely being the first movie that I like really am like. And Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was huge because my auntie worked with Harold Ramis on the film. And she was, behind the scenes, of course, and she kind of just played a variety of different roles on the film. But I knew a lot of the people in Ghostbusters, and I was close in age to Harold Ramis's daughter. So my brother and I and her and my mother and Harold Ramis and his wife would go sometimes to Ojai, California, to their summer home, or we would go to Santa Barbara. And so like I knew their family. And so with Ghostbusters, it was kind of like these are the homies. Like this is my auntie's fam, like doing this movie. So it was kind of like a huge freaking movie, obviously, like massive. But then for me, it's kind of like, it's like Godfather, Uncle Harold, whatever. It's like whatever, But is that riding that line as a child was kind of strange because there were certain things that became like a phenomenon. And so even, some of my friends who maybe were not connected to the business at all or not much and just happened to live in the area or something like that, or when I started going to different schools that weren't in Hollywood, I would notice the effect that certain movies and certain stars had on them and certain music and musicians. And I would kind of be like, okay, this is a difference that I will never experience because to me, fame is very different than what fame is to other people. It means something different. I've experienced fame very differently than most people. And I've had to kind of try to like wrap my head around that. And with film and television, especially, sometimes it's hard for me. And sometimes it affects my experiences. Like
absolutely.
I kind of dug that recent show where The Weeknd, played the
Idol.
Yeah, I kind of dug it in a way, but like knowing him from music stuff kind of tainted my experience a little bit of just watching him act. And then also the fact that like they did such a poor job. He was so extremely Ethiopian, like in the his clothing and then and his jewelry and just the everything and the hair and just the him, the him of it all. But nobody thought like, let's fix this because it's so like glaring, in that show, or just make him that. That could be his backstory. His daddy was from Ethiopia or whatever. His granddaddy left him this chain or whatever. But the fact that they tried to make it like go in this direction, but he was so extremely like the epitome of that. It just was hard for me to watch. It was so incongruous. And I kept wanting to get into the character, but then I was like, bro, if they don't, man, bring him some injury, turn off the camera. It's way too much for me right now.
Why was that such an issue for you?
Because it was not anything to do with his culture in the movie, and they kept trying to drive home this like other cultural story about him and what was his background and what was his name and why was he in jail and what lines did he come from and all this stuff. So they could have either written that in or they could have said, you know what, we need you to like, or did the stylist not understand this? Or did he like refuse to take it off? Or like what? I just wanted, it was just something that really bothered me, like in Waiting to Exhale when they didn't fix Loretta Devine's earring. And so every time I watch it, I see the missing earring and then I see the earring come back and then I see the earring leave again. And I'm just like, the continuity is driving me mad, or like bad wig continuity. It makes me crazy.
I feel you. You just reminded me of I haven't seen it since, and I only saw it because I was doing like film critic screenings at the time. But when I first saw American Sniper, the Bradley Cooper movie where he's like the war sniper, there's a scene where he's like holding what's supposed to be his infant daughter, and you can clearly tell that it's a baby doll, and like you can see him moving the baby doll's hand with his thumb, and like he's just like sitting here holding this clearly fake child. I'm in the crowd losing my fucking mind, like laughing my ass off. It's just like it's so painfully obvious. Like it hurt me to watch that shit. Like I can't remember the last time I saw something that looked that terrible and it wasn't supposed to be like a joke.
Right.
Like I still
this movie's not Airplane, right?
Honestly, like I still think about that shit to this day. Like continuity and like just like makeup and special effects stuff that doesn't look good, like it bothers me. Like I know I get you. I get and you know, like just like to your point earlier about just like being exposed to fame and just like celebrity that early on. It's just like, you know, it's like a combination of like being like desensitized but also like overwhelmed by it, like being desensitized from being overwhelmed by it, you know, like just like those extremes are crazy because, you know, like because like I grew up in a town right outside of the city in Jersey, so like a lot of people would be like, a lot of like celebrities would come to like our neighborhoods and like film shows. A lot of like, you know, like I'm from Montclair, like Joe Budden lives there. Yeah. Like all the rappers move to fucking like North Jersey when they get on, especially now. And like, so like, you know, like just like being around like celebrities, like Stephen Colbert lives in Montclair. Like I've run into him going to the local movie theater before. Wow. You know, so like it's like that's like, yeah, I also get you there, just in the sense of like having that. It's weird. It's like it like forever alters the way you look at celebrity. You know, like it's a really strange phenomenon that like you can't put it into words. You really got to know type shit. You know.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the things about why the Almost Famous director's cut is always my favorite non-documentary film, because of the fact that like the era that it's set in, the mother reminds me of my mother somewhat. And then it's like my life has been so crazy because I'm William Miller and Penny Lane, basically.
Right.
And I mean, basically like Jan Wenner, and you know what I'm saying? Like the manager that almost kills him on the plane, and like I've done all these things, but like I find that like there's so many, I can keep watching this movie literally over and over and over, even the director's cut, which is mad long. And there's always certain little parts that like get me again, or like I capture like a certain little moment or whatever. And then there's so many things in it that are like, I think, you know, I think that Penny Lane and the Band-Aids are like so extremely misunderstood, and like they kind of like label her like a groupie or like a hoe or whatever. And that's what people miss about the film, is that she's the muse. Clearly she's the muse. And I've always clearly been the muse. And so like when people misget and misunderstand who I am and what I do and what it's all about, it kind of irks me, because I'm like, she was really like the star. She was the focal point. She was the epicenter of that whole universe. And like some of the other Band-Aids were a little bit more like random or whatever, but the whole point of them and what they were doing and why they were there wasn't like, excuse my language, it wasn't like to fuck the rock stars or whatever. It was like they really were Band-Aids. They had a name for their crew for a reason. They were there because they like cared about the music and they cared about those guys and they got to know them really, really well. And so there's certain moments where it's like, you know, when he tells her that she was traded for a case of beer, and you can tell that like she's about to burst into tears, but then she's like, what kind of beer? And it's, you know, it's like for real, like, okay, well, then they're trying to like basically like label me a hoe over here. They're trying to make me a groupie when everybody knows I'm not. But since that's what's happening, at least was it like a fair price? Was it like the best beer? Was it the most expensive? You know what I'm saying? But like, and also she is Goldie Hawn's freaking daughter in real life.
Right.
So like the whole thing. But I'm so much more William Miller, and also really, I mean, Like that movie just it touches me on the inside part in so many different ways.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So like when did you first see Almost Famous? Like were you yeah, how old were you? Like were you already like considering like getting into writing and journalism, or like was that a had you seen it years before and were like, yeah, maybe I don't know. Like when
Well,
talk to
we're gonna have to Google when it came out, but I had definitely already been writing. I mean, I did a journalism camp thing when I was at my first year of Venice High School, so I must have been 14 or 15 years old.
Okay,
Um,
and the movie came out in the year 2000, just for
oh yeah,
context.
no, but 2000 I was already at Complex and already
Right.
managing. Like I have been. So I think that's why it touches me so. Um, but I got really into journalism because I was working at Fox Kids, Fox Family, and Haim Saban owned it at the time, and I worked in the executive office for the vice
Wow.
president of on-air promo, and his name was Fred Poston, and he was like the most flamboyantly gay white man imaginable. So somehow he loved that I was like involved in this hip hop stuff and that I was doing this like journalism on the side because he caught me one night like conducting an interview. And when I finished, because he always worked really late, and he was like, "What are you doing exactly?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm freelancing and writing these articles for these different blogs and platforms, and I'm just like I was interviewing an artist and now I have to write it and submit it to my editor and I have to go print it out and stuff." And I was like, "I'm sorry, like for using the company property." And he was like, "No, girl." He's like, "Come in here, close the door." So he was like, "I'm gonna help you." He's like, "I'm gonna use whatever company resources you want and do whatever you want." And he's like, "And if you need to travel or do time off or anything you want," he's like, "I didn't know you wrote. I didn't know you had any aspirations about anything." And so I just was like, okay, well, I believe what he's saying is true and like he really wants to help me. And so I got a chance to go to Atlanta for an extended trip where I was going to get to do different interviews and conduct photo shoots and get a bunch of content together. So I told him, I was like, "Remember when you said I could have time off and you would, you would like clear it with the management or whatever for me to be away and you would get a temp and all that stuff." And he said yes, and he was excited. And not only did he give me this paid time off and arrange everything and get a temporary person to cover my desk, excuse me, but he also actually gave me some cash money, which I wasn't expecting and I really needed for the trip. And that's how I was able to get started with Stress Magazine because I was able to use those resources at Fox Kids and Fox Family. And I was able to always have access to their computers and phone lines, even if I need to make international calls or whatever it was, he would help me. And it was such a big corporation and I was in such an important desk that no matter what happened, even if I was there at night or on a weekend and I did make an international call or I did print like 500 copies in color of something, like nobody knew anything was happening that was weird because they just assumed I was doing it for, for my boss. But he was really on my side. And what really got him to especially support me, like what I just said, how when I went to Atlanta, not only did he get me the time off paid and got a temp, but he actually gave me some cash in secret in his office as a
Mm.
gift because he knew what I was about to go do and he wanted to really help me. So when I got back, there was a Diana Krall concert and I heard him trying to get tickets for him and his partner and it was sold out and they couldn't get tickets and I didn't even know who that was at all. But I had been in the music industry. I was born into it. I already had mad connections. I hit somebody. I looked up the label. I hit somebody at the label. I got him the tickets. I got him the passes. I got him VIP and I gave it and left it in an envelope. And he was like, "What the hell?" He was like, "How did you get this? Nobody at Fox can get this. Nobody at this Disney can't get this. This person can get. How did you do this?" Da, da, da. And I was like, "This is what I do." And I
You
was like,
said I'm not Fox or Disney.
I got real connections. Like I got you. And so he went and he like they had a
Type
box
shit.
and it was Hollywood Bowl and they did the whole picnic and I did the extra and like I was like, "Can I use the one credit card that's like for gifts and stuff?" And he was like, "Yeah, da, da, da." So I used it and I got them like champagne and a special lunch to be picked up from the deli from Greenblatt's Deli, which is the kind of thing that my grandparents or my parents or my aunties and uncles would do for Hollywood Bowl. They would do a little more than just the average fan because a lot of times it was my father might be playing or something like that. So I always knew all the like inside Hollywood tricks. If it didn't come from the music industry, then it came from my auntie and my godfathers and everybody who's like, because at one point I had a lot of godfathers, like Cecil Taylor, the jazz bassist, is my main godfather. My brother's name for him. He and my father were incredibly close. They were in many groups together. And so he was like the main one. But I have a lot of others. And at one point, Francis Ford Coppola was one. And I don't know what happened with him and my dad. They had some kind of falling out. So I never got to know him or his family. And I'm always like, when my father was alive, I would always be like, what, man, why'd you have to mess up the Francis Ford Coppola thing of all things? Why would you mess that up? But my dad was like a real asshole. And a lot of people hated my father, and he was very opinionated and he was incredibly rude. But I have to remember too, very famous in more than one genre of music, known all over the world. He had all these groupies and all this stuff. Like, he was a bananas. Like, he was crazy, but he was a rock star. Like, I mean, I didn't understand it at the time, but later I had to realize, like, oh, okay, compared to some famous people, maybe he wasn't that bad. But that was really like that Fox Kids and Fox Family thing was really my entree into journalism, because I got the chance to do platform.net, and which was big at the time. And then that got me in with Stress. And once I was in with Stress with V and Ket, I became the first and only West Coast editor. And unfortunately, it was right at the time when Ket couldn't afford to operate the magazine anymore, because all the other magazines were operating on payola. It was like they'll put Master P on the cover at a heartbeat. Ted would take ad money from Priority for Master P, but he would never do an article on Master P because it never fit with Stress New York's Illest magazine, and they weren't about what didn't fit. It was a graffiti magazine, culture magazine. It was real. It was a real magazine. So I was blessed because I got to become an editor there. So I worked my way up from this, like, basically just like emailing people, and email was like barely even a thing, and just like getting in and getting clips and just getting in by any means that I could and just doing it. And I mean, I had an urban box office job, and they came and they flew somebody to LA, and they weren't sure if the job was going to be in LA or New York. And I told them, I was like, it's good, I'll do either one, whatever. So I said, let's meet at Versailles, the Cuban restaurant. So the woman comes in, and I'm just ready to like sit down and have this interview. And I'm like, I really want this job. The pay is insane, because this was like the internet bubble. And I was like, oh, this is money right here. Let's do it.
Right.
So she starts wigging out in the restaurant and like not paying attention to what I was saying and like shaking, and she was bugging. And I was like, I look and I see LL Cool J. So LL Cool J is sitting in Versailles randomly, and she's losing her freaking wig. And so I was like, okay. So I went, and I didn't know him like that. I mean, I'm sure he's seen my face for like decades or whatever, but I was like, hey, I'm on a job interview for this like new big website thing. Could you come over please and meet this lady, because so she can chill? So he came over and he did like the little hug and autograph and whatever. And then he left. And so I did get the job, of course, but it only lasted a week, and then they went out of business. So I got like this massive paycheck, did no work, was ready to had all my stuff packed, had tickets bought, had my whole life changed, and then outro, out of business. So that taught me about like the online versus the print thing. And I always loved print, and I only wanted to do print anyway. So I was able to twist it into like, moving to New York to do Complex because Stress went under. And then Mark Echo at that very same time was like to Ket and V, like, can you guys come over and make me this magazine? And they were like, yeah, but we have to bring Stress team, because how else can we do this? So they hit me and they were like, can you move to New York? We're starting this magazine with Mark Echo, da 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 da. And I was like, yeah, of course. They were like, can you do it tomorrow? Yes, I can. So I had already been to New York to meet Grimm right before he went into prison. And I had already done the KMD interview for Stress in LA with Doom and Grimm. So I was thinking about like, okay, well, Grimm is in jail. He's in prison. He might never come home. We had talked about me helping him with Day by Day and doing some label stuff. I said, let me combine all this stuff. My brother has a loft in New York. Let me go, let me move there, let me do Complex, let me do Day by Day, let me do Metal Face, let me do all this stuff and just see what can happen and what can go. And it all happened at the same time. And that was what had me end up moving to New York. And I ended up building Complex from nothing along with the other Stress people. And like I said earlier, Tim Hotep Akul was my student and intern and writer, and he was incredible. I made Chase Infinite my sneaker editor, because nobody knew more about like fancy sneakers than Chase. And obviously he's one of the best MCs, so of course he could write.
Mhm.
And I just, was doing cool, fun stuff over at Complex. And my sis, Rachel Ramus, came over and she was doing all the videography. And because Complex was supposed to be a global hip hop culture magazine. And at first
Right.
it was a visual magazine. We did videos and they were hanging from the hang tags in Macy's. And like, so the first, at first I was like, oh, this is incredible. But then they started bringing in all these, horrible people like Ben White from Platform. He became like our boss, like, and I already didn't care for him or his politics and a lot of things about him. And now I was like, okay, great, he's my boss. And then he brought in his people and his people were not good at their jobs or anything else. And then it just started like turning into this bad thing. And one day they were like, yeah, we're changing directions. Complex is a men's magazine. We're doing this thing. You're going to do bitches on leashes. And it's going to be an article with dogs wearing fashion clothing and women scantily clad on all fours on leashes and all this stuff. And I was like, in the meeting, I was just like, oh, word. And so after the meeting ended, I just remember I just closed my eyes for 1 second and I just popped my eyes open and I kind of looked. And then I just wrapped up the cord from my laptop and grabbed the laptop and put it in the bag. And I had some like expensive, fancy sneakers and stuff that I had pulled. And I just grabbed a box and I just stepped out and I went back to Brooklyn. And nobody even knew I was gone for a couple of days because they didn't even, sometimes people might be on location or doing work, whatever. And then I finally just was like, somebody finally was like, where are you? And I was like, oh, never coming back to that shit. And I was like, I refuse, like on the strength. Like my grandmother was like a staunch womanist and she's one of the first people who ever taught a women's studies course. And like, I'm not for that. Like I didn't make this to make that. And I was like, I'm out. And I left with nothing, no ownership, no percentage, no money. I maybe got a last paycheck. And I just was like, no. And I wish more people were like that to this day, like the meme. But I wish, that a lot of people would stand up when it comes to that, because if everybody stood up and walked out, they would have had to have another meeting like, we're sorry, we're wrong. It's a hip hop magazine. It's going to be the best one ever. You guys are the best ever. We gave you guys everyone a raise. We got rid of some of these people that were shitty. And now let's move on. And we're sorry about that bad meeting.
Yeah.
It doesn't go like that because most people have children or they have reasons why they can somehow justify selling their soul, to the devil basically. And I never have been that one. So the day my unemployment from Complex ran out, the day I got that call, come to the Source for an interview, because I had been, papering my resume all around every record label and every magazine. Went up to the Source, thought I was interviewing for culture editor. They told me, like, as soon as I got there, it was a shit show. And like during the interview, I found out, well, you can't be considered for culture editor because there's too many women editors. So we're going to have the next guy come in to be the culture editor. I was like, okay, bet. What's his name? Joshua Fahim Ratcliffe. Okay, that's my fam. That's the God, but that's my student. That's my former intern. That's someone who's like, to me. And I said, okay. I said, at least it's Fahim. All right, at least it's somebody who like gets it for culture. At least it's somebody who's gonna like fight a bit for culture. But you telling me in a job interview that I can't have the job that I came in to interview for because of my gender and there's too many women editors.
Right, that's insane.
Vastly qualified. Like I come from graffiti and from being a B-girl. I don't come from rap and rap music and the rap industry. I come from actual hip hop culture. Like, and so that's what I really know a lot about. I really know all the old graffiti artists and I know the new ones too. And I know graffiti in every city and who does what. And I knew that then and I know it now. And I've known it since a child. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get to kind of fix the Source a little bit. No.
Yeah.
You cannot reform the devil. You cannot fix the Source. So I was there like at the very bad, worst parts. The only like once I sat down and I was like, okay, I took a pay cut. I took a huge slide. I was senior editor at Complex and a founding editor. So I took a huge pay cut. I took a huge slide down the ladder. I went in there knowing it was fucked. But I got to sit at Chris X's old desk.
Shout out to Chris X too.
For Carlito. I automatically went to the mailroom and just took it because Kim Osario didn't even understand what was going on when it came to stuff like that. So I was like, let me let me delegate and regulate over here and do what I can. And I fought a lot for culture at the source, and I did everything I could to keep underground hip hop in there. I put hieroglyphics back in there. I put Immortal Technique in there. I did a lot of good cultural stuff. I shoved real culture in there anytime I could. Anytime I could do a graffiti event, anytime there was anything to do with B-girl and B-boy stuff, I would always try to somehow fit some culture in there when I could. But it was a disaster. And when I left there, it was because my paycheck bounced because of that Eminem shit, and then pressing up that CD to go along with with whatever they said he said, and him and Benzino beefing and all this stuff. Like my paycheck bounced. I caught a case at the check cashing. I didn't get paid. None of my writers got paid. It was all this stuff, and it was again a situation where I couldn't think. I didn't think like stay and try to like go see Daytwan or go try to see somebody or go try to see Elliot or go like try to go to Vibe, or I didn't even think of it like that. I just thought of it like, you know what? Fuck this. Fuck these people. How dare they have me? I'm a former criminal. How dare you have me catch a case because my paycheck bounced because of y'all fuckery. And so I didn't think, and I just walked out and I just left the source and I left my career in the gutter because I've never written for money since. Not
Right.
one.
Yeah, and just like, wow, there's so much to chew on there, because even before you got the stress, even before you got the stress, I understand that you also worked over at 4080 over in Oakland for a while too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, I worked at 4080. It was part of a recording studio, so I was there kind of office managing, and I was doing it was 4080 in the studio called The Grill. And so I was kind of there to do office management, but that was what led me to answer the phone at 4080 one day, and it was Zenobia, and Zenobia was pitching this other group, 187 Fac, which is like, look up their album cover if you want to laugh. They were in like baths full of milk, and the bathtubs were floating in the water, and they had on pimp hats and no shirts, and it was extravagant. It was perfect for 4080, but at the time, A Plus was like the most biggest CNN fan in the world. Like all he ever talked about was Capone and Noriega, the War Report. He was my neighbor down the street. He would come over or I would go to his, and every single solitary day of our lives, all we would listen to is CNN. He has something that me and him and Tajay called rap Tourette's, which is like you repeat the same thing over and over and over, or you say a certain lyric and then the whole day you're like over and over and over. So he just had CNN like ingrained. And so when Zenobia called, I was like, okay, well, I'll talk to them about that. And I was like, well, what's up with CNN? And I was like, because they're raw and I love the music. She was like, you know about CNN? And I was like, yeah, I wanna conduct the interview. What's up? She was like, well, unfortunately, he's in prison. And I said, I'll do prison. I said, give me the address. So I started writing Capone. And a few weeks later, I was on a plane to go talk to him and go interview him. And my first time ever being in New York. And that's how I got there. And my brother already had a loft out there and stuff. And I went up. I just had got there, got off the train. I had never been there in my life. I figured out how to get to Williamsburg. I left my stuff, and then I figured out how to get to Times Square. And then I took a bus trip up to Wyoming, to Attica, New York, to the Clinton Correctional Facility. And it was a 54-hour trip, round trip. And it was snowing, and I'm a Cali girl, and I've never been there. And I had been on plenty of prison visits, but really never to conduct an interview before. So I didn't have a press pass or clearance, or
in the snow on top of that. Like that's a lot.
The bus trip was crazy. I mean, if ever a movie is made, I'm very much hoping that one gets made about my life, because my life is bugged out. But that scene is like the scene of like all that snow and driving through the Catskills, and I'm like wearing this like light LA sweatsuit, and I'm like not prepared for any of this, and just like the whole thing. And then I interviewed him over a series of a few weeks, and this came out in Trace Urban Magazine. Also, shout out Trace for never paying me or anybody else, just like Lance Speed. So the interview came out, and I did it on napkins with golf pencils on the low. Like I talked to him and was like making notes and writing stuff down, and it was all like, and this trip was crazy long and crazy expensive. And so I was like, I gotta stay longer. My brother had the pass. I was like, all right. So I went and got the phone book, and I opened it, and it said A1 Employment Agency. And I called A1 Employment Agency, and I said, I'm here in New York. I need a job. The next day they call me. They said, do you know what is G Street Records? I was like, yeah. And they said, okay, well, we want you to go there and have an interview. And inside, I'm like screaming, like, you cannot fucking be serious. Like, I'm thinking they're going to send me to like some Wall Street accounting or some horrible thing. No. So I go to G Street and like I'm literally on prison visits to see Capone on the weekend. And now I'm at G Street in the weekend. So like the beginning of the week, John Baker brings me this, the owner brings me this thing, this package, and he's like, I need you to walk over to our satellite office. It's 25 to life. And you need to give these papers. They have to be signed by this guy, Gaddafi. And then so go there, wait, and come back. And I was like, okay. Like in my heart, I'm just like, yo, this is the insane. My life is crazy life. It's insanity. So I walk over there and I get in there and Sincere and Screwdriver, they used to do the radio promo. And I was already on that True Confessions. Like that was my shit. It was going around the mixtapes and the streets already. And I was hearing it and I was like Imam Thug. And I was like, I was already a huge, huge Intelligent Hoodlum fan from the get, from the early, from even before that, from when he was just a kid rapping. Like I had been a fan. So they greeted me. They were like, who are you here to see? I was like, I'm here for Gaddafi. I turn, the window opens. It's snowing, of course, still. He comes in through the window, throws his Newport, has on like a buttery leather, like Pele jacket. And it's like super tragedy Gaddafi in like the era. And then he's like, oh, and peace and you're the earth from LA. And, da, da, da. And he starts talking to me. He's thinking I'm somehow there about Capone. And so he's like, come outside, talk to me. So he brings me out onto the stoop in the snow and we're talking. And he's like, I want to give you some money. And I was like, money. So he gives me money. He's like, put some of this on his books and you keep some and da da da. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, that's not why you're here. And I was like, no, I'm from G Street. John Baker sent me here to get your contract. And he was like, what are you? He was like, where did you come from? And what the hell's going on? He's like, no, you're going to work for me. So I was working for John Baker in G Street and every weekend going up to the prison to see Capone and then writing the article and getting it in Trace and all that. But I'm also like secretly Gaddafi's lieutenant since then. And also still like to this, like to damn near to this day, like I worked with him for years and years and years as like this secret weapon behind a lot of stuff that he was doing. And it all happened from that.
Wow. And just to clarify, this is all before you got to Stress.
G Street and 4080. Yes, this was 97 and 98.
So this is all before you even started doing the West Coast editor stuff over at Stress. Jesus.
I was still freelancing, and I had only ever done one article in Rap Pages and one in Trace about the same woman, Saphir's sister. At the time, she called herself Vanilla Child, and I had wrote about her for both Rap Pages and Trace. So that was my entree into Trace. Was I had this, beautiful woman, and her brothers are like some of the best rappers, and she was doing these like kind of fashion shoots with the stylist and doing all this stuff in LA. But then also she was like a hardcore rapper, and she was, trying to really come out. And so I wrote the piece, and that was how I even knew Trace to even pitch them the CNN thing. So yeah, all that was prior, and then it kind of just all rolled from there, having those clips, and then that was how I was able to elevate at Stress quickly the way I was, because I had print clips going for me and I was able to like jug. I mean, I knew all of these industries and businesses innately because somebody in my family did something either in print or publishing or media or music or entertainment or law or record label background or films and TV, all this stuff. So it was like part of my upbringing to know little bits and pieces about how this stuff worked. And then I was able to kind of like just keep switching lanes and just do whatever it was that I could. Yeah. But that was a crazy time in life because it was like just moving to New York, trying to like go to clubs and parties and learn all the DJs and meet everybody. I'm from LA. I'm going to all these labels. This is the height of the LA the beef. And like everybody's introducing me and they're like, should I be afraid to tell people you're from LA? Da, da, da. And I was like, if someone has a problem with me being from LA, then we can go outside, male or female. You know what I'm saying? So I was never scared. I was always like, and people were like, oh, you shouldn't be out there in New York right now. And I was like, I was just in Queensbridge because Gaddafi took me to Queensbridge. I was under the bridge. We had to duck from some bullets the first time I ever went there. But this is really what cemented me as a journalist was when he had me meet him at the train station near the bridge, and he brought all the children from the projects with him. And when he brought them, he said, "This is MJ. She's a journalist. She writes for magazines and newspapers. Be like her." And that's what did it.
Man. And then around what time did you first link Doom and Grim?
Doom
Because
and
that was
Grim came to me together. Doom and Grim came together to me when I did the KMD article for Stress. They were they were forming like a new KMD, and it was going to be Doom and Grim.
Right.
Sub Rock, when he passed, God bless his life, when he passed, he was only 19. So he had the SP. Sub was the one making the beats. And he left the machine. So there was a lot of unfinished and there was like undone beats and half done beats and things that were already programmed in this machine. And then Grimm purchased a lot of production equipment for Doom. And so that equipment plus what Sub had left behind is how Doom was kind of able to go on from there. So I knew him since the days of the label that did the Black Bastards re-release, Subverse it was called. And that's when we met. But again, kind of like the Soul Scientific thing, like I met Doom and Grim because I was supposed to be just writing an article about them, but it didn't stay like that.
It developed into a business relationship.
Like that. I mean, it developed into a personal relationship. I went to New York to see Grim because I was supposed to be seeing Grim. He ended up seeing another woman in sex. It was his last night before prison. So I fly all the way from California to see this Harlem gangster dude that I'm like into this dude. I've been talking to him, didn't see him. And then and then he went to jail, but I was visiting him in prison. I was working at Complex during the week, and then I would leave and I would do not one visit to Grim, who was upstate, but not as far as where Capone used to be. But I was coming home to Brooklyn in the prison van, sleeping for 3 hours, getting up and doing the same trip again to see him twice every weekend, every single weekend. And I really held him down because that's already what I was familiar with doing, not usually for like rappers and record executives and stuff like that. And then he got a woman while he was in prison, and he kind of sprung that on me that like, oh, I have this lady from Canada now, and she's coming to visit sometimes, and da da da. And then they moved him, and we were Ellie, the woman I mentioned earlier, Blake's woman at the time, had her like high-powered family lawyers or people who were like really affiliated heavily with like the civil rights movement. They were able to get him out because he was under the Rockefeller drug laws and he was supposed to do life.
Right.
They were able to get him out, and then he came home, and then he was able to do the label himself and do everything else by himself. And at that time I had already segued over to doing Metal Face stuff with Doom and working with Doom all the time, and us sharing the studio and everything that happened from there on out. And that went on for years and years and years and years. So,
yeah. Did y'all? I mean, like obviously there wasn't like a romantic relationship after that, but like, did y'all keep in touch? Like, were you still friends after this, or you don't have to get into that? You don't want to.
Of course. I mean, that's the thing is we never had the chance to even have the relationship other than me holding him down in jail and all that stuff. Like we never had the relationship because I didn't ever hook up with him the first time I was supposed to because he saw somebody else, and I knew that's what was happening once I got there and figured it out. But I kind of knew that. I had heard, about him, and I knew about like Grim Reaper, and I knew about the life that he used to have before he rapped and stuff. And I wasn't going to see a label exec or a rapper or something like that. I was going to see a dude who's a gangster, and I know what gangsters do, and I choose mostly gangsters, so I chose it. It wasn't like a weird thing that like just happened.
Of course,
I was confused about, but it was a trip. It was a trip because I really did hold him down through the jail stuff, and so it was a trip to me when he was like, yeah, I got this lady and da da da. But that's what happens, and things like it's always real swift and changeable, especially with someone like Percy who's like he does what he wants, and that's life. That's his life. And so being the woman, you have to always be able to either step forward and be like, okay, I'm going to be the boss because he's away in jail. But then you also have to, at the same time, be able to, behind the scenes, step all the way back and be like, okay, I'm going to keep helping with the visits, and I'm going to keep helping putting money on the books, and I'm going to keep helping DJ with the day by day stuff, you know, but I was already familiar with that kind of life because I had been living it since a kid in LA anyway, just being that because I was in gangs. And so I was familiar with, you know, not just the work aspect of what I just said, which is that as the woman, sometimes you go into the meeting and people listen to you, and sometimes you are the boss or whatever. But I've been the vice president and the general manager, and also went and cleaned the toilets and did the laundry and cooked the food.
Mm.
You have to, I think, you have to be able to switch between the two because it's both. I'm never going to be a man. What I do is well management. I'm never going to be a man. I'm never going to be a manager. I can have the highest executive title. There's always someone that's going to sexually harass me or say that I can't make a certain decision because of my gender, or they don't even listen to me when I talk. They hear Charlie Brown Mama talk,
Right.
and that's always going to be the case.
Right. I can only imagine. And then, you know, on top of that, there's just the whole, like at this time, like you're working as a journalist, but you're also working like on the business side, like with musicians, like doing with other people. And that's like you know, that's an extremely like juggling that is really difficult. I guess like I want to let people know that like that's like as somebody who's done similar things in the past, that's hard work, you know, like like not even just because of like, you know, like juggling just like the work, but just like the conflict of interest that comes with that. And, you know, like that there's a lot that goes on there. And I guess just because like, you know, you were already doing so much at this time, like how did you, like, was there ever a time when you just kind of sat to yourself and were like, how do I manage all this? Like, how did you just kind of did it? Like, it just kind of happened?
Did it? I mean, honestly, I still do it. Like, I always keep journalistic integrity. Like, I'm a for real journalist. And
Same.
once I wrote that first article about KMD, I never covered Doom again, ever in my life. I never, ever, never, ever, ever. And even now to this day, like I have a blog, and I recently launched a column called Talk Like Sex. And
Oh yeah.
I've written extensively about Hus Kingpin, but Hus Kingpin's not my client. I've never met him. He's never paid me. I don't know him. So when I write about him, or when I interview him for the column, or when I review his album, it's real journalism. I met this dude out here recently called Big Daddy Chop. He's a producer and an MC, a Mexican, a younger dude. Incredible. Like the talent, he reminds me of Doom, like how the way he can rap and the way he can switch from one beat machine to the other. And he's just like a genius. I met him from Brain Orchestra.
Hey,
So,
shout out to Brain Orchestra.
yeah, shout out Brain Orchestra. That's the homie.
Jersey all day.
So I've covered Big Daddy Chop in my blog. He's not my client. He's never paid me. He's not, there is no conflict here. You know what I'm saying? It's that I find his work so compelling, and he stands out to me so much that it was important to me to sit down and do like a real full-length feature on him. And I've done it, and it's done. And since then, I have gotten to know him more, and I have worked with him a little bit on the more music business side. And since that time, therefore, now I assigned his album review to a new writer that I'm developing. This cat named Elijah Morgan, who's straight out of high school, and who reached me like, I want to write. And I was like, well, really? Because if you tell me you want to write, guess what you're about to do in 5 minutes? You're about to write. You know? And so I got him working, and he's in the new magazine we started, which is drumsandammo.com. And, you know, to me, there is no conflict because I have integrity. And even when I was at the Source and Benzino's people were calling, like, I'll give you 10,000 cash if you put my thing in the magazine. And I needed $10,000 in cash, but I went and got it different ways. I didn't involve it in the Source. Now that was stupid because everybody at the Source was selling everything and doing all the bad things that you're not supposed to do at a magazine. And so I should have just looked up and been like, you know what? Rome is burning in a major way. Like Nero is already playing the fiddle over in this bitch. I might as well take this bread and finagle whatever the finaglement is. The worst thing I did at the Source was I had all these Mitchell and Ness jerseys that we won't say where or how I got them. They were authentic, and I was selling them from up under my desk. and taking Carlito's old packages and selling them to the used CD man down the road, who gave me extra because when he saw my ID and saw who my daddy was, he told me, he was like, anytime you come in here, I'm going to give you 4 times more than I give anybody else. He's like, please come in here and just tell me stories about your dad. And that was the only way I could eat and pay my rent and bills, because the source didn't pay enough for a New York apartment and
Of
food.
course not.
Please.
Yeah. No, I worked at the source for a very brief amount of time. I interned over there.
Oh boy.
Thanks thanks to my man Spence. Shout out to Spence. That was one of the earlier writing jobs I had. But that was like early 2010s. Like it was already a shadow of its former self. So, you know,
It was when I was there.
Yeah, they were
a whole new thing.
Right.
New
Yeah. No. Like,
new ownership, new everything. It wasn't on Park Avenue South anymore, right?
nah, I don't think so.
Was it Black Enterprise or post Black Enterprise?
I honestly don't remember.
Like,
I went into the office like 2 or 3 times, and I mostly did my writing. I mostly did my writing remote. You know, like it was basically it was a closet. You know, like it was. I was just happy to have the opportunity. And once again, like shout out to Spence. I hope Spence is doing good. That's my man.
I love that. I hope so too. I would write for them now. Like I would go back. Because you know, sometimes they have good articles and sometimes they have good journalists, and sometimes they miss. But I would go run the social media. They for surely need the help. Things are spelled incorrectly. They got the wrong link. Holler at me if you ever you probably still might have my resume on file, but you know, if you need social media management and you're willing to pay for it, hit me up. But you know, like I would do it. Why not? It's the source. It's still, that's the thing about something like that, is it's still, there's always something still there where you can kind of lightly resurrect it somehow, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or not.
Yeah, and it's all circumstantial. I don't even know. I haven't even thought about it in so many years, but just like man, we've just already covered so much ground that I'm just trying to get myself back on terra firma. But I can't I'd be remiss not to bring up anything Mad Villainy related since we're here. And you know, you had already mentioned it before with like the Mad Lib Mass Appeal profile and how you kind of brought the two of them together. Or at least like kind of like served as that like connection between the two of them, since you were already working with Doom at the time. And of course you said you had known Otis since like since you were younger. So like around the time that Mad Villainy started to formally come together, and when, you know, like they're traveling and it would be like the arrangement where like Doom's asleep and Madlib would be making beats and Madlib would sleep and Doom would record, and just like I've heard and read so many stories. I'm sure you know this about me. Doom's my favorite rapper. I talk about it all the time. He always has been. But like, what was it like? Because you A&R at the project and you did so much other stuff, you know, like helping to bring that project to life. So like, what was it like helping to bring Mad Villainy to life? Like, what was being involved with that like? I know that's a really big question, but like, there's so much there.
Parts of it were very easy and parts of it were very hard, because like Doom didn't know who Madlib was, so I had to sell it. But then once I finally got him to sit down, he loved Madlib's work. And originally, Mad Villainy was supposed to be both of them making beats and both of them rhyming and just kind of this like just assortment of all the everything. But at the end of the day, Doom had, you know, a child to feed, and he was always about his paper. And so although he came to love Madlib's work and came to love him as a person, and he really wanted to do the record, for what Stone's Throw was offering after it was all said and done, he finally just was like, you know what? He's like, this has to be, it has to be trimmed down just based on the fact that they're not coming up with the right kind of bread for this. And he was like, so I'm just going to rap and we'll just do it like that. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, it's still going to be great and it'll be good. And so Madlib was sending beats, and so Doom had reels, and we were listening to stuff and selecting things, even up until the trip. I remember the car trip to take him from the hotel and the airport to the hotel and the hotel to eat and then over to the so-and-so lab for the first time. We were still playing beats in the car at that point, and that was the first time that they ever actually worked in person. And Doom hated the internet. This was pre-social media, this was pre-cell phone, this was like not things were very different, so the way that a record came together was very different. But they did do some of the pre-work in that he was already getting reels and they were talking probably on the phone, because sometimes Doom did get on a landline and do some phone calls for like some time especially when he was trying to do something like this. So that was part of it. And then when it came to Fancy Clown, he reached me and he was like, yeah, he's like, I need you to do your voice. And he explained to me the concept of the record, which was like Doom had a girl, and then Vic Vaughn and the girl and all the stuff, and the brother and the this and the that. So he was like, yeah, just call the machine and just leave a message. And he's like, and I'll cut it and chop it. And I was like, you're not going to give me any more than that. You're not giving me content. You're not telling me anything. So I freestyled this whole thing for Fancy Clown. And then what had happened was at that time, the live-in girlfriend deleted it. And she shouldn't have been in the lab or dealing with anything like that, or she shouldn't have been finagling with that. It was work product. You know what I'm saying? And so he was pissed. I was pissed. I had to do it again. There was no script. I didn't really remember. Like I had to do it again. But he loved it the second time. The second time he caught it. He got it. He took it. And this was a tape. Like he had a voicemail message with a tape. So this is like me calling from Brooklyn to Georgia on a tape. He takes it and turns it, cuts it, chops it, turns it into this song. So that part of it was, was live and it was flying. I had already been on the MF Grimm Downfall of Iblis. I'm reading the Quran. I'm on the record with Count Bass D, and I'm on there a couple times with my voice. I've done other voice work with other people and stuff. And so it wasn't that new, but he was like, okay, you're on this album. So what are you going to call yourself? So back to SOL Music Works and Solar Panel, my crew is Sons of Light, Allah's Reflection. And so like, when he said that, I was like, that's like the feminine aspect of the crew, and the moniker is like very meaningful. And I was like, I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna do that. So that was how I chose that choice. And I didn't really get billing. I had to fight for that fake credit that they gave me, calling me a project consultant or whatever they called me. They refused to give me an A&R credit. I never got paid a single dollar. I've never gotten a royalty. I've never gotten publishing. I've never gotten nothing, never. So I was only there for that first recording session. And then by the time they were almost done, it was time to do Coachella. And something really bad happened with Doom and I told him, that I wasn't going to be able to continue, and that I was leaving, and that I was leaving Metal Face, and that I was leaving all the projects, and that I was doing my outro. And he was very sad and very hurt, and it was like very like damaging for us both and a lot of other people. And it was like really, really, really sad and just like a disgrace. But stayed on the phone with him all night. And then when he spoke again, he was like, but you're not going to quit, are you? So I said, no, my word is my bond. Regardless, I'm going to finish and I'll do the Coachella and then I'm out. And so I went to road management for Coachella, and I was there and I was in the rooms, and I had told so-and-so, I need my own space. I need my own room. I can't be sharing a space with Doom, but I've already been chosen to be the one to do the security and to do the road management and to do all the stuff for the actual event. I'm not going to be replaced. I'm doing it and I'm finishing that. And then you won't be having correspondence with me any longer. You'll be dealing with whoever takes the place of doing business management or whatever. I was like, I'm out. I told them this so clearly. They got me a room with him together.
Oh my God.
Talking about there were no other rooms and there was no way and all this stuff. And so that was like a very, 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 very rough experience. And then we moved to LA the next day, and I was right down the street from my auntie's house. And when we got there, I was like, okay, where's my keys? Where's my room? They had done it again, but in LA. and I'm like, in LA, you're saying there's no other hotel rooms in all of Los Angeles. We're not in Mecca, California. We're not in Palm Desert anymore. We're not at Coachella. Coachella's not enough to fill every single hotel room in LA. Whatever, whether that was Egon or Chris, Monarch, Peanut Butter Wolf, or whoever it was that did that, that's the kind of thing where, like, if a job did that to me, then I would get a lawyer immediately
Right.
for sexual harassment and gender discrimination and endangering, you know what I'm saying? Like endangering me as a woman employee and all those things. And that's what they did. And they did it intentionally. And so I was already knowing that I was done, and I had already given myself an out date, and I had already told him, this is the last thing we're doing. I was supposed to stay a couple more days and help finalize whatever else they were finishing up with MV, but we got in the room and I was mad, and I was right down the street from my auntie's house, and Doom went to get fresh and do his showers and his clothes and stuff. And I was just sitting there trying to figure out what to do, really. And I saw this huge wallet on the desk. It wasn't Doom's wallet. It wasn't my wallet. Mind you, I didn't get paid by so-and-so for anything ever. They just neglected to ever pay me for anything. So I was like, I'll be right back. And I just grabbed the wallet and I opened it and I looked, and it had like a few $1,000s in it. So I just thought, it was like, fuck it. And I took the cash out and tucked it in my bra. And I was like, I'll be right back. And I opened the door and walked down the hallway and looked around for cameras and grabbed the empty wallet and threw it, and then went back in the room. And then the phone had started ringing, and it was a maid and the hotel management looking for, there's like the former guest left something. Do you see anything? And I was like, no, I don't see anything. And I was like, the artist I'm here with is bathing, so let me check, and I'll knock the door. So I made this big production of like pretending to look for the wallet. And then, I didn't tell him any of this about anything. And I was like, I'm gonna go up to the roof and just get some sun. And I grabbed all my shit and the money in my bra, and I, hit my auntie, and I was like, auntie, I'm right down the street. Can I come through? And she's like, yes, we're about to eat. Your cousins are here. Come on. And I got in a yellow cab, and I never saw or spoke to him directly again in my life.
Wow. I'm very sorry.
Okay. That's life. That's how it goes. We did pass messages, and we did talk and build, and we continued to, have a certain type of communication after that, outside of music and business and all that kind of stuff. And he told me that the person to tell his story and to tell his history and to tell the lineage of KMD and of him and of his brother and of, Imam Isa, Dr. Malachi York, and how it all went. And he told me that when he was alive, and he had many chances to tell me otherwise if he so chose to do so. And he never chose to pass any message to me about that, or to tell me that I was not that person, or any of those things, which is one of the reasons why I speak about Doom, and I speak about KMD, and I speak about Zev Love X, and I speak about Sub Rock, and I speak about everything that I know and everything that I experienced and everything that he told me and everything that I've studied. And a lot of people would like for me to not, for some reason. Certain people have a real nasty attitude about me speaking, but that's that fame thing again. To me, Doom was my study partner and my friend, and somebody that I did music with, and we hung out and painted graffiti. And he was like, kind of like one of my cousins or one of my brothers or one of my gang friends or somebody that I, painted with growing up. Or he was like, like a boy of me, and I was like a girl of him. And I wouldn't really think that anybody should have any kind of opinions or things to say about anything that I say about Dumale or anything. I know his family, his brother, his
Right.
or his father, his eldest son. Like, I know the widow, and you know what I mean? Like, I
Right.
this was what he chose for me to do and say. I didn't choose this. People have given me death threats, and all kind of crazy things have happened on social media and all kinds of stuff. I don't get paid to talk about Doom. I've never gotten paid for anything Doom, really. And so, like, he's not with us anymore. Very few people know anything really about his life. And that was his intent. And I'm not out here speaking to TMZ or getting paid off what he made, or making some like sensationalist, or even putting myself really into anything that I'm not in. I talk about my memories that I had, and I talk about things that he and I discussed, and I talk about things that I know, that I've done the research, and that I've read the books myself, and I've been in the lessons myself, and I know a lot of Ansars. Doom is just one of very, very many Ansars that I know, and I keep their history too. And they've asked me to keep their history. It is what it is.
And that's and it's special. It's special to hear you say that, considering all the shit that you've done beforehand. You know, like you had already, you know, like as a journalist and as a writer and as someone who came up around music, you know, like you were already a chronicler, you were already an archivist to a certain extent anyway. And you know, like that was just another chapter, you know, like that was just like another like very like, you know, substantial and clearly meaningful chapter in your life. And you know, like, and you know, like not to belabor it too long, like in regards to Doom, but like, you know, like there are certain people that I know who like knew him very well, and people that I trust to talk about him and whatever happened, like you, and like of course like his widow Jasmine. I don't know her obviously, but like we know of her, and Star. You know, Star is of course a very vocal proponent of Doom, and she's fantastic. You know, she's a legend in her own right, and just like, you know, it's a like that's a I just can't even imagine. You know, like you clearly care very much about this, and you were there for a lot of it, and you know, like whatever personal history y'all have, it's just like like you're doing what needs to be done. You know, and you're not doing it, you know, like you're not doing it out of any malicious or manipulative or like greedy intent. Like you said, you're just kind of talking about what you were there to see and what you know, like, and like, you know, like talking to you now and reading what you've done, and just like I don't know, like I said, just everything I was able to find about you before, like I was just like full on overwhelmed by the amount of things you've done, you know, like, and like that's, you know, like when I said at the top that like I have a lot of respect for like what you do, that's what I meant, you know, like not even just in relation to Doom, but just like, you know, like you've, and it's like even the stuff that you do now, like you're still in the thick of all this, you know, like talking to me about working with younger writers, and like seeing you talk about like working with Hyro Day, and just like everything you do with the hieroglyphics and all the chefing you do, and just like all the you know, just like working with other writers over at Drums and Ammo and the Sex Column. Like you're just, it's you know, I was talking about inspiration earlier, and just like how incredible it is to see, you know, like our, just to like see elders moving, like just still moving, you know, like that's something that I find a lot of solace and like appreciation in it, like it's just because there's always talk about how this is like, you know, like for young people only, da 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 da. It's just like, you know, like we're all here, like I want to see everyone move through this as long as they want to be here, as long as they feel safe, as long as they feel valued, as long as they feel like they have something to say and something to provide, be here, you know. And just because I'm curious, just like for you, like considering all the things you've been through, all the issues you've had, and just like all the things you've done, like what keeps you going through all of it? Like it feels like you're not slowing down anytime soon. I don't want to speak for you, but like you're still here and still kicking in a way that a lot of people aren't, you know.
I mean, I think part of it is that the lineage that I come from, my father recorded from the 1940s until the 2010s. And he only stopped recording music because he passed on. And so he never stopped. He never stopped. And I feel like, who am I to stop? And like my grandparents were activists, union organizers, label organizers. They worked in civil rights. My granny worked with the Black Panther Party and the Dene Navajo tribal leaders. And she was like a huge force. My grandmother was a force. And she went on, even when she started to have Alzheimer's and lose her memories, when she was lucid, she never stopped working. The people in my family are like extremely driven about the work that they do, because the work that they do is like all power to the people work. And it's not even, my father did become a mercenary and he did change a lot as a person. I watched my father sell his soul to the devil. I watched my father become other than himself. And I never wanted that for myself. I never want that for any artist. I never want people to choose the industry or the business of music or the wealth, what people think is the wealth of it. I never want them to choose that, because really it's about teaching and learning, and it's about continuing the voice of the people who came before us. And now when we talk about ancestors, Sumala is an ancestor. Trugo is an ancestor.
Yeah.
We're talking about people who are so young. Fife is an ancestor. Zombi's an ancestor. Like, we're talking about people who should still be here. They should still be
Yeah.
recording music. They should still be living life. And I do have a fatal and terminal disease now. I've been sick for 10 years. I never knew what was wrong with me. Nobody could diagnose. It's something that my mother has had since the 1980s. It's called SJS, or Steven Johnson syndrome. And I've been very
I
sick,
know. I know
very sick.
exactly what that is. That's really
And
scary.
it's scary as fuck. Like, I can't, when my mother first got it, I remember the doctors telling us, that she wasn't going to make it. And they had flown doctors in from all over the world to observe her. She was in Cedars-Sinai in LA. And my auntie took me and my brother to like an operating suite. And we had to be up in a balcony and like look down on her while all these people were like watching her and examining her, because they knew nothing about it. And they didn't know what was happening, or was it contagious, or, at that time they didn't believe it to be hereditary. Now they know that it is hereditary. And it's something that, it 15% of people do die from, symptoms coming like in a cluster all at once. And I've been in the hospital a little bit, I've been in the ER a little bit, but now for me, everything is like, I don't have children. It's too late for me to have physical children. I sacrificed my life always. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could have been a star. I was a singer. I had the avenues to do it. I didn't go that route. I went the other route. I've always been an advocate for artists. I've always pretty much been a nonprofit, even when I had big jobs, whether they were in the industry, which don't really pay that well anyway, but mostly outside of the industry. I've had jobs that did pay well, that I worked really hard to get, and to get to that level as an executive. But I was taking all the money and recording underground MCs at my house, or buying a mic, or buying somebody an SP 1200, or flying to this place to interview this artist because this magazine couldn't afford that kind of stuff, or whatever it was. I've always put anything I made back into hip hop and into the culture. And I've always been poor, and I've always been righteous, and I've always been a teacher. And I have vows that come with my culture and that come with my belief. And people have these weird, incongruous ideas about me, that I have like ulterior motives, or that I'm doing things for money, or that I'm saying things to try to gain some kind of access or fame or something. And it's all kind of weird to me, because I was born famous. And I was born wealthy, not just wealthy with knowledge that my mother and her side of the family gave, but also at that time, my family, did have a lot of bread. I personally have never had money, except when I was in the dope game. I had money then. But I've never made money from this music stuff. And I've always turned it back over. And I've always had students. And I've always tried to have students in a lot of different elements, in art and cooking and journalism. And if anybody wants to learn the music industry, and I still do it. And now I'm 49. And sometimes my students are almost as old as I am. And that's not really part of the tenets of what I believe. The tenets of what I believe is you teach the youth, you know what I'm saying? But in this music and in this business, especially, there are so many pitfalls. And so if you're 45 and you've been emceeing, and you have, especially when there's children, because my father was a horrible father, incredible musician, awful, awful father, awful parent. I don't want that for the next generation of girls. I want the next generation of girls' dads to be great fathers, to make money from this music, to put money aside for them so that they can pursue any and every dream that they have. You should be able to live your dream when your father is famous and rich. As a daughter, as a child, you should be able to, the sky should be open for you to do anything. And a lot of times it's not. And sometimes it's because the fathers don't know. There's issues with the mothers, there's wives, there's other kids, there's other families, there's a lot going on. There's not enough money, all these things. So I look at it like, okay, this person is grown, but they're a child when it comes to their knowledge about what to do about this side of the business of music, about their publishing, about what deals to take and not to take, and what to do and what not to do. And that's why I put a lot of it free online. People tell me, don't do that. You need this, you need that. Don't do that. But this is what I do, and this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm not supposed to wake up tomorrow and say, I'm sick, I'm tired. I lost my health care yesterday. But I'm not waking up today like, okay, let me turn all the way bad now. Let me sell everything I have. Let me take these things that I have access to and use it to get all this money. Let me turn into, I'm not a wicked person. I'm not a bad person. I'm just can't do it. It's not in me. So I'm going to continue this life the way it is. And it comes with a lot of blessings. It's a very hard road. It's toil for me every day. Even when I was healthy, it always was hard every day. And it's still hard. But there's parts of it, teaching a student to me is like having a child. I don't have one, but I opened the door for this young person to either choose this or not. And I also am being able to save them from the things that I had to go through. Nobody was there to warn me and tell me, oh, this is going to be like this. This is going to be like that. You don't want to go work at the source for XYZ reason. Don't do this. Nobody was there to do that for me. So I want to be there to do that for hopefully for young people, but I guess young people of all ages, because sometimes I'm ending up teaching people who I've come to find out are even older than I am.
Right.
But it keeps me young and it keeps me alive and it keeps the bad things off my mind to the greatest extent possible. And focusing when you're in pain all the time is crazy. And so it's kind of like I'm just kind of relearning what can I do, what can I not do, what can I do to keep my memory sharp. And that's another reason why sometimes I tell some of the memories and some of the stories, not just about Zoom, but about my whole life has been like a crazy movie.
Yeah.
I want to tell it because, there's always a chance that we're all dying to an extent. And there's always anybody can walk out the door and get hit by a Mack truck, like our granny would say, right? Anybody at any time. So it's not that because technically, my mother's still with us and she contracted this in the 80s and she's still here and she's still, she's had a life full of pain and illness her whole time since then, but she's alive. So there's a chance that this is what's there for me or not. But I just kind of look at it now like, okay, there's certain things like I have a turntable in there and a machine. I've never been able to take time to do production. Everyone I've ever asked to teach me has either said no or like Doom taught me a little bit and we made one beat together and then we just didn't ever have time. And so like for me now it's like, okay, today like I have to sit myself down. I have to, and I have to get that machine running and I have to get the interface working with the computer and I have to get to start to making some beats because I might not be here next week. You know what I'm saying? And so like I want to complete the few things that I haven't yet, basically, and teach as many people as I still can and give time with my nieces, especially my nieces, but my nieces and nephews. And like some of them want to learn to cook. I haven't had really enough time. It's always crazy. And I want to at least pass those things because those things come from my grandmother. And I don't want for my line to just end. I want to be able to pass certain things. But I've taught hundreds of people dozens of things. So at the end of the day, when I'm not here, I'm always here as long as they keep teaching somebody too.
Oh my God. Like I understand the importance of wanting to teach and just like impart and make things easy to access for people to a different extent. I haven't been here forever, but I've actually been thinking about this a lot, so I'm really happy you brought it up. I'm at a point like I've been professionally writing for about a decade at this point. And yeah, it's crazy to think it doesn't feel like it, but like seeing slightly younger people, and actually in some instances like quite a bit younger than me, just like talking with people and talking about the writing process and like what you should expect from an editor, and like giving, like making resources available to people, whether those are emails or contacts or making introductions with artists. Like I've done that with artists. I've done that from artist to artist. I've done that from writer to artist. I've done that from artist to writer. Like, but like that's not. I don't like to talk about that stuff publicly because I'm not doing it for the kudos. Like I'm just here because like everyone deserves to have everything that, like, like if you're willing to do the work and you're a good person, and like I suss that out about you, I want to be able to help you get as far as you can. Like that's the most important thing to me, is that like we all have all the resources that we need to get done what we need to get done, because like we won't have, like we're all we have, we're all we got, like people say that shit all the time, but like it's like that's become extremely important to me, and it's something that I try not to take that for granted. I just want to help, like with like whatever meager resources I have, like
it's not meager. Like, and I can see like a meeting like this where it could be like you and I and Dart and Tim and Chris X if he has time, and even like Nelson George and Harry Allen if they have a moment, and like, you know what I'm saying? But just like to get all of us on a big Zoom and invite, the 200 or 300 young people that really want to do this, and not charge anyone anything, and just give, show us what you got, like on that Rick and Morty episode where they have to like sing for their planet's life or whatever, like something like that, where it's just like let's kind of like show the hand of like this is everything, and this is what we have, and this is like, and to create some kind of resource that people can access. And that's the payment to access the resource, not to pay me $19.99 a month or whatever like I hate shit like that. I don't want that. I don't want your $19.99 a month. I want, if you're willing to actually sit and learn from us, and you're willing to actually like be the young person who's really wanting to take this on, especially now where like music is just wild. Like there's so many different kinds of genres, and there's so much tech that we are even like, bruh, like I've had a computer since I was 7. I had the first Mac Apple thing ever, and my brother was like programming video games on it, and I was looking at it like, how do you turn this thing on? And it was just that 2-year difference that made it so crazy.
Right.
The difference. But like these kids now, like my nieces, they're like, oh, Auntie, you don't know how to screen record. Let me do it. And I'm like, these young ones now, they even have more they have more genders and identities and realities than we do. They have more
Absolutely.
races and like they have all these like I cram to even understand how all of that is for them. And also they were born into this social media stuff. Like I have plenty of life off social media, and I can take it anytime and shut it off. And I've done it before where I'm gone for a year, or more. And people are like, but I mean, sometimes you do what you got to do. But I mean, like, I want to give everything that we have to them, because it's different. Like there might not be print magazines anymore, or
who even knows?
Be a pod and a docuseries now, and like I want them to have those tools and to learn from us, because we can save them so many steps and save them so much heartache. And sometimes they're gonna learn, especially with this like intensive type of thing that I'm talking about, they might raise their hand and be like, you know what? This is not what I thought it was, and this is not right for me, and I'm going to go back to school now for something different that makes a lot of money, and thank you guys for your time, and I'm out. Peace. And that's what I would hope to be able to give and provide, not just for the children, but like their parents and the other educators. And like, we don't have time, not only me because of the illness and everything, but none of us. If the pandemic didn't teach us that, among many other things that are happening right now in the world, and especially in this country, we don't have the luxury. Like we don't have time to waste. And you can't waste opportunities. Like if we get a chance, if they tell you right now, like, oh, you know what, can you go to Brazil tomorrow? The answer has to be yes.
I'm going to Brazil tomorrow. Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's something you can't teach. That's people who are like ready to take a leap of faith and those who are not. And those who are not, it's good because there is a machine. We have to acknowledge that there is a machine and there are people who want to be a cog in it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like right as the pandemic was starting to crank up, I got invited to go to this artist summit in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've talked about this a bunch on here, but like, yeah, like that happened like the day before I was supposed to leave. They um one of the players on the Oklahoma City Thunder got COVID, and that was like before anybody knew
I didn't know.
anything about what it was, you know. So like the whole time I had to like consult, like I consulted my parents, my sister, my girlfriend, and like I just told everybody like, yo, like, should I do this? And everybody was like, probably not. But
Yeah.
I was like, nah, I'm gonna go do it. You know, like we did it. I went down there, met with a bunch of people. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made in
Yeah.
my life. It was really it was really scary because it was like, once again, like, you know, like COVID had just started. It was March of 2020, so like right in the middle, or like right as it was really getting started. So like, you know, like that, like doing that, and even starting this podcast, like this happened because of the pandemic. You know, like that was like oh, like maybe I should be doing something like this. Like and like it was less about the medium and more about just like having something that's mine, you know, like not, you know, just
Yeah.
being like this, like no matter what anybody says, like I make all the decisions, you know, like I reached out to you, I edit the episodes. Like the only people who've helped me with this are my homie Michael Big Flowers. He made all the visuals.
Yeah.
J Words made the intro beat. Like everything else is me.
It's
I
you.
edit everything, I promo it, I send it to the DSPs. It's all me. You know, like,
Although,
you know, and
and that's the greatness of being a man. You can do that. I'm
yeah.
starting finally a publication for the first time where it's just really me, but I have to do it standing next to Ambush, DJ Ambush from Drums and Ammo.
Of
He's
course,
established the
yeah.
brand a long time back. The brand is solidified, and he's a historian of hip hop himself, and he has all the credential to be a great partner for this. He doesn't have the publishing experience. He definitely doesn't have the editing and the journalism and the everything. He told me the other day, he was like, "Really, this thing is weird." He's like, "Because you're the star." And he was like, not just between me and you, but like the people that we're talking to are nowhere near as famed as you are. And I was
Right.
like, and I don't even think of it like that ever. I'm like, no, 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 I'm not the talent. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not the talent.
You're a legend. I'm gonna tell you that right now. You're a fucking legend.
Thank
Like straight
you.
up and down. Like, you know, like,
It's regular life to me. And I know that sounds weird, but this has always been my life. I was literally born into this life. I don't know anything else. Sometimes I wish, especially when it comes to like relationships and stuff, I wish that I could have a civilian relationship. I wish I could have a marriage. I wish there's no way. The last time I tried, I was living in New York and my phone rang at 2 in the morning and it was Ghostface and he was calling from another state and it was about work and it was about, you know what I'm saying? But it blew up the relationship. And then I was like, I'm not going to try this again because this guy thinks that there's something, like I've never been in a room alone with Ghostface Killer ever in my life. I barely know him. He was calling me because it was about this thing with Theodore Unit. And then it ended up being when I went to bring him the Doom Beast that Doom had made for him.
right.
But I had to sacrifice a whole ass relationship that was actually kind of cool for that. And it made me know like I can never try it because it can never work. You know what I'm saying? But then in relationships with artists, also, my daddy was on his 13th consecutive wife when he passed away. And that's just wives. We're not even thinking about girlfriends and groupies and baby mamas.
Right.
And, it's a whole like satellite system. So, I was like, I just know what it is. And I try to deal with it all accordingly and give everyone the best of myself. And when I'm friends with a wife or a girlfriend or the mother of a child, or when I'm friends with the child or auntie to the child, I try to give everyone the best. And I try to keep as much walls up as possible in a way that's appropriate. And a lot of times the father is the much closer bond that I have. And a lot of times I have business with the father, or there's some kind of work or some kind of money or a company or something. But I still try to like give the sister a fair friendship and a real friendship. And if they want friendship, if they want love, if they want to learn to cook, if they want, within reason. But then we're talking about, most people are rock stars. And so it's like, I have to have a wall between what's known and what's unknown. And of course, I'm not going to tell children all the things about either of their parents. And I only can navigate. You asked me before, like, how do I move like that? Because literally, I grew up navigating all of that and wasn't given the choice. You know what I'm saying? So I try to make it better for this round of children when I know these situations are happening, or when I know, like, their dad has a crazy life and therefore their life is going to be crazy. And I try to, like, in passing, give little anecdotes about how I grew up and with my father and with everything, because maybe they'll, like, hear it and be like, well, other friends at school can't relate, but what she's telling me, even though she's so much older and she's my auntie or whatever, like, she can relate. And now I'm kind of like getting it, like, oh, well, my niece the other day, she was like, my dad's verified. She's like, that's kind of gross. I was like, daddy's a famous rock star, girl. Like, get with the program.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so silly.
Out of the mouths of babes come the best kernels of, like, hey.
Yeah, nah, kids say the darndest things, all that shit. Before we formally wrap this up, I think it'd be crazy for me to not say that, as a man, or as like a male presenting person. I'm non-binary, I'm genderqueer, but, like, just like in the sense that, like, there are certain aspects of life and the game and the industry that I will never understand or have to experience because I'm mask presenting. Like women, like, I don't need, like, I don't need to say that y'all go through the most. Like that's clear as fucking day. But and that's part of the reason why I try to be conscious, and I try to be as forthcoming and helpful and understanding and empathetic as I can. And that's all I want to do, is just, like, I just want people to feel comfortable and to feel safe in any context, and, like, whether that's professionally, personally, like, that's the type of person I am. That's the type of person I aspire to be, so I always just want everyone to know that I don't want to come across as too self-conscious, but I just try to facilitate. I just try to offer what I can, do what I can, and then step back and let everybody else do their thing. That's important to me.
Thank you for that, because we need that. And it's really just about everyone kind of just standing up for what's right and speaking up when things are going wrong right in front of them. And like you said, from what you're able to give, to have the willingness, to give what you can, because some of us aren't able, some of us don't have all the money in the world, or, what I'm saying, or whatever, but we do have something. We have something, whether it's our knowledge or whether it's our wisdom and the things we've been through, or if we have resources or whatever it is, we all can help each other and just be more symbiotic as humans. And that's all I'm really about. And I try to, like, just continue on with that to the best extent possible, while people are busy telling you that you're doing it for this reason, you're this, you're not that,
Right.
like this, you're the wrong age, you're not the right way, your complexion is wrong, the way the thing on your head is incorrect, and blah, 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 and all the shit. It all is happening all at once, and you're trying to, like, tune all of that out while you're just trying to do the right thing. And I think it was a lot easier when we were outside in the world and there wasn't, like, all this man-made infrastructure and all these, like, computer systems. I think we probably had a better system of, like, okay, you're gonna go hunt and gather, and we're gonna go do this. And we're all gonna, like, click up around the fire at night and have
Yeah.
about whatever, and it's gonna be all chill, and everybody's gonna wake up tomorrow morning and do it again when the sun comes out, not when the alarm goes off because they said we have to be at work at this time. But we're here, and we might as well use it for what it is, I suppose, until it's not here anymore.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Shit. And, like, this, I feel like this conversation could easily go on for another 2 hours, but, like,
It's not drink champs. It's not. It's
no.
real. Peace to DJ AFN too, who's one of my dearest friends from going way, way back, and who I feel is like the backbone of Drink Champs because he's so knowledgeable about
Yeah,
everything hip hop. And it's, you know, when he does get a chance to speak, please listen to EFN when he gets a chance to speak because he knows a lot.
yeah. No, he's a whole, once again, a whole legend out here, man. Like it just so humble about it too.
Humble,
But
quiet genius. Yes.
oh man. But before we formally wrap this up,
Yes.
Walasia, if your life was a movie, I mean, like I mean, like we already kind of touched on this, but like, if your life was a movie, what would it be about?
It would be about service because everything I do is about service. Like serving my family members and serving the community and serving the fans and serving the artists and serving more than one master kind of, while always trying to like always do the right thing at the same time, and just acts of service because literally everything I do I always sit down and have that choice, like, okay, I can get up and go do me and I can just like go have fun or do whatever I feel like doing right now, or I can get up and clean this house all the way and cook again for the next round of people that's coming and get the groceries ready for the next thing. And those are the two choices. And it's like, I don't choose myself. So having other people choose to help me or be there for me or do small kindnesses for me or do little acts of service towards me is like the blessing that I get in return. And so it's kind of like this, you know, cycle of life. But I want, especially because for me, like this body has probably a more limited time than others. Like I said, I mean, we're all dying in a way, but I want my existence here to be infinite as possible without having formed a line and without having any living children here. And, you know, this is the only way that I know how to do that is that like help everybody first, like make sure to a certain extent, it's kind of like being on the airplane in Almost Famous when they were about to die and fall over Mississippi. Like at some point, you had to like get your own oxygen together, but not all the way because it wasn't a commercial flight. And it was like, you know what I'm saying? Like you could. That's really my life. Is like literally like that. And so it's kind of like, you know, you make these decisions. Like I can get some of my oxygen together, but I also have to be like making sure that like the talent is good because at the end of the day, if anyone's gonna die in a plane crash, don't let it be anybody from Hieroglyphics. Don't let it be anybody from Wu Tang. Don't let it be anybody from Soul Assassins. Don't let it be let it be me. If somebody has to go, if they were like, this plane is too heavy, somebody has to go, that's my life. That's what I do every day to a very small extent, is I jump off the plane first. Tiny little bit.
Yeah, well, I want to be the person. I'm sure several people have told you this, but I want to be one of those people to say that you deserve the world, and like, you know, like it's yeah, like just thank you, like for the conversation, for the work you've done for yourself and for others, and for your perspective and your resilience and your knowledge and skill and talent, and just like yeah, that's like you do thankless work. You know, like you know, like you've said it, but like even if you hadn't said it, like you do like what you do is thankless in a lot of ways. It's stuff that people take for granted, and it's been gratifying for me to see over the course of the last like 2-3 years, people finally start to know who you are, and like for me to also like learn more about you,
Thank
you
you.
know, and to like get that opportunity through people being interested and wanting to, you know, like chart the history of someone whose history is worth charting. You know, like you've done incredible work and continue to do incredible work, and it's inspiring to me, not just as a writer and a media person, but like as just like a person. You know, it's like what you do is aspirational to me. So yeah, just like yeah, thank you for everything. Thank you for your support. and just I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I'm just once again very grateful that you came to do this today. This is very it's got very emotional. I wasn't expecting this. But,
Me either. I won't cry. And I haven't like shed a tear, but but I'm so glad that we did get to talk about some of the Hollywood things and some of the film and television stuff and things like that, because I did enjoy it. And it's one of my passions, especially watching documentaries and like anything. I love the true stories. True stories is what I really 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 love. And for some reason documentary film like has my heart. I don't need to speak the language. I don't even care if like the production value is not that great or whatever. Like I'll watch almost any documentary. Like give me all the documentaries. So I just love that you have a show like this, and that I got to talk a little bit about like some of the Hollywood side and some of the things, that I've been involved with and stuff. And it might be a documentary about a group where I used to, work with some of the artists in the group. And I don't know, there could be some kind of documentary thing happening when the strikes are all done. We'll see.
Let's go. Yeah, no, like this is like I said, this is we didn't even get to the. I'm mad. We didn't even get to the documentaries. Damn. Well.
I'll give you like a top 20 list or something that you can publish at some point.
Yeah, either that or we'll just have to have you back one more time.
I would love to come back one time. Hopefully people won't be mad like when they repeat on other shows. But I would love to come back. There's always more to say and more to come. And maybe one day I'll get a chance to interview you about some of the great things that you're doing.
Well, yeah, I'm here for it. Whenever you want, I'm around. I'm honored to be considered.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you.
No, man, I appreciate you, honestly. Like, yo. Thanks for listening. Shout out to y'all for making it this far. And shout out to all the Black people listening too, because y'all really impeccable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell a friend to come through next time. 1.